Night of the Kyuubi attack. Naruto, cried Kushina and Minato together, as they saw the Kyuubi try and strike their son with its claw and prevent itself from being sealed into Naruto. Seeing that their son was in danger, and without even thinking what they should do, both parents shielded their son with their bodies, where they were both impaled by the Kyuubi claw. As the two parents slowly felt their life drain away, they both made their goodbyes and slightly prayed that their son would be safe and happy. Soon after, the Kyuubi was drawn into Naruto and sealed away, after which both parents died with a smile on their faces, not knowing that by using the Shiki Fujin, dead demon-consuming seal, Naruto's life will be changed forever in a way that neither of them could have foreseen. After the events on the Kyuubi attack, the former Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen, was appointed by the Fire Daimyo and the Fire Council to retake his position as the Sandaime Hokage, after which he began the slow and painful process of rebuilding the village and protecting it from its enemies, and who believed that Konoha had been weakened from the Kyuubi attack. A task which was not easy, given the many lives that had been lost in the attack, the amount of damage done to the village, and the fact that Konoha had lost its Hokage Namikaze Minato, who had been declared the strongest of the Hokage. As the Sandaime finished up signing several forms that would help in the rebuilding of the village, he decided that he had done enough for one day and to start again tomorrow. But before heading home, he decided to check in on someone in the hospital. As he walked through the dark streets of the village, the Sandaime gazed at the damage that had been done by the Kyuubi. As he looked, he knew that things would be hard for everyone, given the price that the village had paid to be saved, as many people had lost someone dear to them, whether they be a friend, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a wife, a husband, or a lover. The Sandaime himself was one of those to be counted, as he too had lost someone dear to him, his wife of 20 years Bawako, who had been Kushina's midwife at the time. When the attack initially began, Sarutobi had assumed that the Kyuubi had freed itself when Kushina was giving birth. But when they investigated the secret base that Kushina had been giving birth in, they found that it was intact and found the bodies of the ANBU guard that were protecting Kushina and the body of Bawako, who all showed that they had been killed by an unknown assailant. For the past few days, Sarutobi and his advisors had been pondering who could have attacked the hidden base and who could have freed the Kyuubi, and with both Kushina and Minato now dead, no one could tell them what had happened or who was responsible for the disaster. But despite no knowing who was responsible, it did not stop people from theorizing who had caused the attack. The strongest of these theories was one that the Sandaime's former rival and friend Shimura Danzo had come up with. Danzo's theory was that the Uchiha clan, or at the very least a member of the clan, was responsible for the attack, as it was a known fact that their Sharingan Dijitsu allowed them to subdue and control Biju. Sarutobi, of course, argued against the suggestion, as he did not want to believe that the Uchiha clan was responsible. He also stated that there was no proof, along with the fact that no one other than the former clan leader Uchiha Madara had been strong enough to subdue and control Kyuubi. Sadly, though, despite his arguments, the seeds of doubt and suspicion had already been planted in people, which would only grow further, thanks to the long-held distrust that many high-ranking members in Konoha had of the clan. But despite his worries, Sarutobi decided to leave such matters for another time, as right now he had arrived at the hospital and the room he'd been walking to. The room itself was guarded by a team of ANBU, who had been assigned by the Sandaime to guard the occupant of the small room. After the ANBU saluted to their Hokage and let him pass, the Sandaime entered the room and went to a small crib that held a sleeping baby boy with spiky blonde hair and whisker-shaped birthmarks. As the old Kage stared down at the sleeping baby named Naruto, a sad look appeared on his face as he pitied young Naruto, knowing the kind of life he would be subjected to when he got older. It was especially hard for the Sandaime, since Naruto had already lost so much to begin with, as that he would grow up without parents and never know how much he meant to them. It was even harder for the Sandaime, given how he would have to hide who his parents were from the general population, which included Naruto himself. For if his father's enemies learned who he was, they'd come after him in revenge. All the old Kage could do was to create a law that stated that no one was to tell anyone outside the village or anyone of the younger generation what Naruto was. He had created this law in the hopes of not only protecting Naruto from outside forces, but as in the hope that Naruto might make friends and form bonds with children his own age. But even with this, the Sandaime feared that this wouldn't work either. Soon enough, though, the Sandaime decided to head home and get some rest for the coming day, where he left the room and bid goodnight to the Ambu guards, unaware that this would be the last time he would ever see Naruto again, or that the ANBU standing guard would not see the morning sun of the next day. Several hours later, a distance away from Konoha, as the moon in the night sky was at its peak and was just about to be covered by a large dark cloud, for dark silhouettes could be seen traveling at high speed through the forest. As they were traveling, the sound of a baby crying could be heard. The four figures had ignored the baby's cries for most of the journey, but after a while they finally had enough. "Can't you shut that brat up? Its screams are getting on my nerves, and if it keeps screaming someone could hear him," spoke one of the dark figures. "All right, I try," replied another one of the dark figures, where he tried to calm the crying Naruto. As the man carrying Naruto tried to calm him down, the moon came out of the dark cloud and shone its light down at the ground, where it revealed the Kumo headbands on the four shinobi. "I still don't know why we have to risk everything just to steal this kid," said one of the Kumo shinobi. "We're sealing him because he could be the very thing that would finally give us the edge we need over Konoha," replied the leader of the team. "And what makes this kid so important that he could help us do that?" asked the final member of the team. "Because he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, nine-tailed demon fox," answered the team leader, surprising his team. "But how? I thought the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi was killed after the Kyuubi broke free and attacked Konoha," said one of the shinobi. "This boy is the new one, as after the Kyuubi broke free, the Yondaime Hokage stopped it, and the only way to do that is to seal it away," replied the team leader. "But then how do we know this boy is really the new Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi?" asked the shinobi holding the crying Naruto. "You saw the guards that we killed when we entered the hospital. If this boy wasn't the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, then why else would they be guarding him? Besides the hospital file we stole said the boy's name is Uzumaki, and ever since Konoha captured the Kyuubi, all their Jinchuriki have been Uzumaki. The first Jinchuriki was the Shodaime Hokage's wife, Uzumaki Mito. The second Jinchuriki was Uzumaki Kushina, who was the last Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and the wife of the Yondaime Hokage. Hence, it makes perfect sense for this boy to be the new Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, as he would be the son of both the Yondaime Hokage and the previous Jinchuriki." After hearing this, the other three Kumo shinobi nodded their heads in understanding, as it did make sense, since from the beginning, when the shinobi villages were formed and started creating Jinchuriki. The shinobi villages have always had the Jinchuriki of their village be of close relation with the ruling Kage of their village. Once the team leader had finished explaining what they were doing, he turned to the shinobi that was carrying Naruto, who was now crying louder than ever. "Roki, can't you shut that brat up?" rounded the squad leader angrily, as Naruto's crying was serious, getting on his nerves. "I'm trying, but he just won't stop crying," replied the shinobi named Roki. "Well, just do something, as we don't know how much longer it will be before Konoha finds out that the brat is missing, and by that time, I want us to be as far away as possible. For the moment that they learn that he's gone, they'll send every shinobi they have after us to get him back," stated the team leader. As Roki continued to try and quieten Naruto down, what they didn't know was that, as Naruto was crying, he was releasing a large amount of Ryuryoku spiritual power. This power had been unlocked when the Yondaime used the Shiki Fujin to summon the Shinigami and use it power to seal the Kyuubi and half its power inside Naruto. Although none of the Kumo shinobi could feel the immense Ryuryoku that Naruto was releasing, several other things that were out there that night could sense Naruto's Ryuryoku and were drawn to it. As they drew closer, they let out a haunting cry, which none of the Kumonins could hear, although baby Naruto could, which was what was frightening him so much and caused him to cry. Let's just get out of here. He will eventually cry himself to sleep, spoke one of the Kumo shinobi, where the others just nodded. Fine, let's just gagdrahhhhh, replied the team leader before he felt something large grab onto him from behind and pull him into the dark. When the three other Kumonines saw their leader being pulled away by something, they all cried out their captain's name. But all they heard in reply was their captain's screams, where it suddenly stopped with a sickened crunch and a shower of blood that showered them. WW, what the hell is going on here? Cried the Kumonines that was holding Naruto. I don't know, replied one of the others, as he began to shake in fear, as he held his kunai in his hand. I say let's get out of here before whatever that thing comes back and WWHH, cried one of the Kumonine before he was pulled away screaming by another of the invisible things. Tegeta, AHHH, cried the Kumonine's partner before he too was grabbed and pulled away by a giant invisible arm. Lee, cried the Kumonine that was holding the still, crying Naruto in his arms. But all the man heard was his teammates' cries of anguish, before a loud crunch was heard and a shower of blood appeared. At seeing all his teammates being killed by some kind of invisible thing or things, the frightened Roki tried to run away. But before he could, he was sent flying backwards after something big landed right in front of him. As he hit the ground, Roki dropped baby Naruto, who was still crying loudly. Roki, of course, quickly picked himself up, tried to run away, leaving Naruto behind, but before he could get very far, he was picked up from his feet and lifted up into the air and then eaten by the large invisible beast. Once all the Kumonines had been killed, the three other beasts came out of the dark, and unlike the four Kumonines, baby Naruto could see the four creatures. The creatures were all humanoid in shape and were all the size of a large tree, and all had a large hole in each of their chests. But the thing that differentiated them from one another was that the white masks that they all wore were of different size and shape from each other. These creatures were called hollows, although normally these creatures wouldn't come to the shinobi world, since they feared the creatures called Biju that lived in this world, as well as the fighting force of this world, which were called shinobi and samurai, and had abilities that rivaled their mortal enemies, the Shinigami and the Quincy. But even despite their fears, there were still some that would come to this world to devour human souls. As the creatures loomed over the crying baby, they began to argue over who was to eat the crying baby, as the spiritual power that Naruto was giving off was stronger than any of them had felt from a human in many years. He's not much to look at, and he's very noisy with his constant screams, spoke one hollow whose mask was the shape of an ape and had arms like one. There barely even enough of him to even munch, said another hollow whose mask took the shape of a bird with a long beak and had wings on his arms that allowed him to fly and had finger-like claws. Maybe, but the spiritual power that is emanating from him is stronger than any that we've felt in this world, spoke the hollow wearing a tiger-shaped mask and had large claw-like hands. So which of us shall have the pleasure of devouring him? Asked the hollow with a bear-like mask. For the next few minutes, the four hollows continued to argue amongst themselves over who was to devour Naruto. After much arguing, it was decided that the tiger-masked hollow, who was the strongest of the group, would eat Naruto. But just as the tiger was about to pick baby Naruto up, there was a sudden blur of orange, and the next thing the tiger-masked hollow knew, his arm was severed and a shower of blood exploded from the stub that was once his arm. ARRRRAGHHH, my arm, cried the hollow in pain. After roaring in pain, the tiger-masked hollow looked around for whomever or whatever had severed his arm. The four hollows quickly found the perpetrator, who was standing on a large tree branch on a nearby tree. The mysterious person was clearly a woman by the shape of her body. Her attire consisted of an orange overshirt with two white straps on each shoulder, a large beige sash around her waist, black stretch pants, and long beige wrist warmers, secured by bands, and long beige leg warmers with brown light shoes. The mysterious woman also wore a beige neck warmer, which she pulled up to cover her face, which hid her identity. Well, here I was taking a casual night run, and I find a group of hollows attack a helpless baby, spoke the mysterious woman. Who the hell are you? Roared the hollow with the ape-like mask. Me. Well, I'm just your everyday good Samaritan who can't stand to see cute, innocent little babies being attacked by the likes of you, replied the woman. Well, whoever you are, you're going to die, roared the ape-masked hollow as he charged at the woman with his fist raised. Seeing this, the woman remained perfectly calm and waited for the large hollow to come at her. Just as the hollow was about to hit her, the woman disappeared, and the hollow instead hit the tree that she had been standing on a moment ago and completely destroyed it. But before the hollow realized what had happened, the mysterious woman reappeared again right in front of him, where she then smashed her fist right in the hollow's face, completely destroying its mask and killing the hollow. Before the other two hollows could even react to what happened to their fellow hollow, the mysterious woman disappeared and reappeared again in front of the hollow with a bear-shaped mask. Before said hollow could even react, let alone defend himself, the woman delivered a powerful roundhouse kick to the hollow's face, destroying its mask and killing the hollow. Seeing that two of their brethren had been destroyed, the two remaining hollows became enraged, where the hollow with the bird-shaped hollow mask shot out at claw fingertips, which flew towards the woman at staggering speed. But when the claws hit the woman, they passed right through her, revealing that she was an afterimage, where as soon as the hollow saw this, the mysterious woman reappeared right above the hollow and delivered a powerful leg drop down on the creature's head, which shattered its mask, killing it instantly. Seeing that last of his brethren being killed by the unknown woman, and knowing that he stood no chance of winning due to the woman severing his arm, the tiger-masked hollow decided to at least deny the woman her victory by killing Naruto. If you care so much about this brat, then try and save him from this, roared the hollow leader, where he raised his one remaining hand and went to crush the crying Naruto with it. But just when he was about to crush Naruto, he suddenly felt his hand being stopped by something, where when he looked down, he saw that the mysterious woman had once again reappeared and blocked the hollow's fist, protecting Naruto from being crushed. But what shocked the hollow the most was that the woman had stopped his clawed fist with one hand. Impossible. How can you be so strong? Cried the enraged hollow, as he struggled to crush the mysterious woman and the crying baby, but found he could not, as the woman would not budge. Before the hollow could do anything else, a small blue glow appeared between the woman and the hollow's hands, after which the hollow's arm blew up into piece. Agag, who the hell are you? Roared the furious hollow in pain as he was now armless. At this, the woman just smirked behind her neck warmer and replied, like I said, I'm just your friendly good Samaritan. After which she then jumped into the air and delivered a powerful upward kick right to the hollow's chin, causing its mask to shatter, killing it instantly like the others. Once the last of the hollows had been destroyed, the woman then went over to the still, crying Naruto and gently picked him up and removed her neck warmer. When she removed the neck warmer around her face, the woman revealed herself to be an attractive dark-skinned woman with purple hair, which was tied up in a ponytail. There, little guy, it's all right, you're safe now, said the woman kindly, as she smiled down at the crying boy, where when his blue eyes met with her golden eyes, the young boy calmed down and even smiled up at the woman, as if knowing that he was safe with this woman. Said woman was of course no ordinary person. She was in fact former captain of Squad 2 and former commander-in-chief of the Amatsukido Punishment Force, Shohoin Yoruchi, who was also the former head of the Shohoin clan, one of the four great noble houses in the Soul Society. Ever since she rescued her friends Urahara Kisuke and Sakabashi Tessai from being punished by Central 36 and saved the 8 hollow-fied Shinigami for being executed, Yoruchi had been in hiding in between the Soul Society, the world of the living and its parallel, Area 30, otherwise known by most Shinigami as the Shinobi world. This world had been an oddity to the Soul Society for many years, where the people of this world developed unique abilities that rivaled that of the Shinigami, a power which was later dubbed by the people of the world as chakra. The power itself involved the people using their physical energy in combination with their spiritual energy. By combining these two things, it allowed the shinobi to create unique techniques which were on par with any Kido, spirit way, spell. Although when the people of this world died and entered the Soul Society, they did not possess the same abilities that they had in their world. This led the Soul Society top scientists to believe that the people of this world could only use chakra when they were alive, due to it requiring both physical energy and spiritual energy. But even despite this, the unique power of a shinobi caused much concern and interest in the Soul Society, as many believe that with these abilities, the shinobi could become quite useful in the Soul Society war against the Hollows or become dangerous threat to the Soul Society itself. The Soul Society concern of the shinobi world grew even more when creatures called Biju appeared in the shinobi world, which are made out of chakra and could not be destroyed even with Kido and Zanpakuto and could only be sealed away. But even despite these concerns, the Soul Society began to experiment with the people of the shinobi world in the hope that they could somehow replicate the shinobi abilities. For several years, the Soul Society researchers experimented on the people of this world, but all their attempts in replicating the shinobi powers failed. Also, during the course of these experiments, an unexpected side effect appeared where several genetic abnormalities appeared in some of the people that were experimented on. These abnormalities continued on through the descendants of the people that were experimented on by the Soul Society, where they were later became known as Kekkei Genkai, bloodline limit, by the people of the shinobi world. After seeing the result of the experiments and not wanting to do any more harm to the world than what had already been done, plus the fact that hollows rarely enter the world, Central 36 decided that any traveling to the shinobi world would highly restricted, where all Senkamen that led to the shinobi world would be sealed off, and that only those with special permission given by Central 36 or the head captain could enter the world. Although what neither the head captain or Central 36 knew was that Yoruichi knew of a secret way to get to the shinobi world, and given that fact that Shinigami rarely entered or monitored the world, it was the perfect place for her to hit in from time to time. Yoruichi especially liked the shinobi world, as she found the shinobi that lived in it interesting, as she found their style of fighting very familiar with her own. She also found the shinobi to be fun to mess with, where she would practice her stealth skills by sneaking into shinobi villages and taking something, so to have the shinobi chase after her. This, of course, allowed Yoruichi to amuse herself, while at the same time keeping her skills from getting too dull over the years. Naturally, none of the shinobi that attacked her or chased after her could catch her, but there were two exceptions, which actually made her little games interesting. The first was a man named who used a technique involving lightning and would cover his body with it and use it to enhance his strength and speed. The other person was a shinobi named Namikaze Minato, who actually caught up to her once when she was being chased by several Konoha shinobi. He had caught up to her by using a technique he called the Hiraition no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, which allowed him to teleport instantly from one place to another that had one of his special kunai or his special seals on it. Obviously, even after Minato and caught up to her, Yoruichi had still gotten away. But even still, she had been impressed with Minato's skill and the technique he used and admitted that he was very impressive human. As she looked down at baby Naruto, she could not help but be slightly reminded of Minato, where Naruto had the same hair color and clear blue eyes, and wondered if Naruto was perhaps related to him. It was then as she looked down at him that Yoruichi noticed the name Naruto embroidered on the baby's blanket. So if your name is Naruto, that's an interesting name. One of your parents must have really loved ramen a lot by naming you after a ramen topping. That, or they wanted to call you something fearsome like a maelstrom, spoke Yoruichi with a smile as she held the boy and smiled down at him. At this, baby Naruto just gurgled, as if laughing at what Yoruichi had said. As Yoruichi continued to stare at the baby in her hand, she couldn't help but marvel at the Riryoku that baby Naruto was emanating, since it was surprisingly strong for a human, let alone an infant, to have. Since from what she was sensing, he had a great deal of power in him, and it would only grow over time. Soon enough, though, Yoruichi decided that she should bring Naruto back home, as she guessed that Naruto was obviously from Konoha. Since Konoha was not too far away from here, plus the shinobi that had Naruto had the symbol Kyumo on him, which was a rival of Konoha. Not to mention, given how much Naruto reminded her of Minato, whom she had heard became the new leader of Konoha. She guessed that Minato was his father, or at the very least some kind of close relative of him, and Kyumo had kidnapped Naruto in an attempt to use him as some kind of political hostage. After a few minutes of using Shunpa flash steps, Yuruchi arrived at Konoha, where she snuck into the village without anyone noticing and decided to head to the Hokage's mansion and leave Naruto there, knowing he'd be safe there till morning, where Minato would find him. But before she could leave Naruto in the office, she suddenly heard several people coming towards the office. Not wanting to be caught, Yuruchi quickly jumped back through the open window that she had entered through with Naruto and hid behind the wall next to the window. As soon as Yuruchi had jumped out of the office, the lights of the office lit up and a middle-aged man, wearing official-looking robes, entered the office. Closely following the man were three other people who looked to be about the man's age entered the room. Along with them were three more men who were wearing white-colored hooded trench coats and porcelain animal masks. As Yuruchi listened in on the people, she could tell that they were extremely angry and worried about something. "How could this have happened?" spoke the middle-aged man wearing official-looking robes as sat behind the desk of the Hokage's office. Obviously, the boy was stolen by a group of highly skilled infiltrators, as they were able to enter the village, kill the men we had guarding the boy, and left the village with him without alerting our patrols, spoke a man with half his face covered in bandages. "Do we have any clue as to who exactly took the boy?" asked a middle-aged woman, who was the only woman in the group. "None, I'm afraid, as whoever took young Uzumaki covered their tracks well and left no clues as to who they were," replied one of the masked men, whose mask was in the shape of a boar. "This is unacceptable, Captain," spoke the other middle-aged man, who wore glasses. "Our apologize, Hamura-sama, but given the Kyuubi's recent attack, it has been difficult in keeping the village secure, as many of our shinobi have been injured from the attack, and, as you know, we had to take down the Kanchi Shisatemu sensing system due to the power requirements. Hence, there are many holes in our defenses, which an enemy can sneak through undetected," replied another of the masked men, who wore a bird-shaped mask. "The matter as to how they got in is of little matter right now, since we need to focus our full attention on getting Naruto back as quickly as possible," spoke the middle-aged robed man, where at this everyone else in the room nodded in agreement. Upon which the robed man turned to the man wearing the cat-shaped mask. "Captain, I want you and the other captains to gather your best people and have them ready to move out in 1 hour. Also, I want you to go to Hyuga Hayashi, Inazuka, Tsum, and Aburame Shibi and inform them of the situation and tell them we need their best people to help us track down whoever stole Naruto as quickly as possible." At this, the three masked captains all nodded their heads in understanding and disappeared in puff of smoke. Once the three captains disappeared, the middle-aged woman suddenly spoke. "This is a disaster. It is not enough that our village was attacked by the Kyuubi, and we lost not only many of our shinobi and Yondaime Hokage, but we've now lost the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. This would never have happened if you had agreed to my proposal and let me take the child," spoke the bandage-faced man. "If I had done that, Danzo, you would have trained Naruto to become a mindless killing machine, and he would have become no better than a weapon. That is what Jinchuriki are. They're living weapons used by us as deterrents against our enemies, as well as to show off our might. To think otherwise is to be naive, Sarutobi," replied Danzo. "Naruto is not a weapon. He is just an innocent child, and we owe it to both Kushina and Minato to care for Naruto after they sacrificed themselves to save this village. To do otherwise would be an insult to their memory. As Minato said so himself before he died, that Naruto was to be hailed as a hero for what he was," responded the Sandaime. Before Danzo could respond to Sarutobi's comment, the middle-aged women spoke up. "Hiruzen, Danzo is correct, as the boy is a Jinchuriki and therefore is a living weapon for our village. But how the boy is raised is not the issue here. The fact of the matter is, he has been stolen from this village, most likely by one of the other villages, and without him, and given the losses we've already suffered, our village is extremely vulnerable to attack from any one of our enemies. I am aware of that, Koharu, but what else would you have me do? All that we can do right now is send out search parties and hopefully find Naruto before it's too late, spoke the Sandame, after which he and his advisors continued to discuss what they should do. As the four elder shinobi continued to talk about what they should do next, Yoruichi decided to take her leave, as she had heard enough. From her time in the shinobi world, Yoruichi had seen the rise of the shinobi nations and the creation of Jinchuriki, and how they were treated. Naturally, she did not like what she saw and did not believe that Naruto deserved to be treated as such, hence she decided to take Naruto somewhere else, where he could have a better life. After traveling for several hours using Shunpa, Yoruichi came across a small village that was far from Konoha. Naruto had slept through the majority of the trip, hence Yoruichi had no trouble with him. When she arrived at the village, Yoruichi was certain that Naruto would be safe here, where she then left Naruto at the doorstep of a small house. But as soon as she left, Naruto woke up and began to cry. Seeing this, Yoruichi went over and picked him up so to calm him, and as soon as she did, Naruto stopped crying and smiled at Yoruichi and reached out towards her with his small arms, as if indicating that he wanted to stay with her. Yoruichi at first tried to ignore Naruto's silent pleas, but when she looked down at him and he gave her the infamous puppy dog look, which could bring down even the mightiest of Shinigami, she broke. Whether it was because of the puppy dog look that Naruto was giving her, or because of some form of maternal instincts that Naruto seemed to bring out in her. But whatever the reason, it was then and there that Yoruichi decided that she would give Naruto the life he deserved. After which, she then disappeared into the night, carrying her newly adopted son. Last time on Rogue Shinigami. When she arrived at the village, Yoruichi was certain that Naruto would be safe here, where she then left Naruto at the doorstep of a small house. But as soon as she left, Naruto woke up and began to cry. Seeing this, Yoruichi went over and picked him up so to calm him, and as soon as she did, Naruto stopped crying and smiled at Yoruichi and reached out towards her with his small arms, as if indicating that he wanted to stay with her. Yoruichi at first tried to ignore Naruto's silent pleas, but when she looked down at him and he gave her the infamous puppy dog look, which could bring down even the mightiest of Shinigami, she broke. Whether it was because of the puppy dog look that Naruto was giving her, or because of some form of maternal instincts that Naruto seemed to bring out in her. But whatever the reason, it was then and there that Yoruichi decided that she would give Naruto the life he deserved. After which, she then disappeared into the night, carrying her newly adopted son. 8 years later, Karakura Town. Ka-chan, what are we doing here? Asked an 8-year-old Naruto, as he held his adopted mother's hand, as they walked down the crowded streets of Karakura Town. Well, we're here, Naruto-chan, to visit your uncle Kisuke. Do you remember me mentioning him? Replied Yoruichi, as she smiled on at her adopted son, who was wearing an orange shirt, with a small black spiral along with black pants and gray runners. Yoruichi herself was currently in a jigai, which she had gotten off Urahara right after she took a Naruto. Currently, the dark-skinned woman wore a pair of short white shorts, which just stopped below her thighs along with a matching white zip-up jacket, which showed her midriff and had its zip lowered showing her orange bra underneath. 1. The outfit, of course, gained the attention of many male passerby who couldn't help but stare at the exotic woman. Several men, of course, got slapped on the back of their heads by their angry girlfriends or wives who were with them after catching them staring at her. Said women then glared angrily at the former Squad 2 captain, who were either appalled that Yoruichi would wear such an outfit with her son or were jealous that Yoruichi had such a figure after having a child. Yoruichi, of course, only smirked at seeing all this, as she loved playing these kind of games, as it showed that she still got it. Naruto, on the other hand, remained oblivious to the whole thing, where he just continued to walk on with his mother. As the two continued on their journey to Urahara store, Yoruichi glanced down at her adopted son and smiled at him. The past 8 years have been a bit different from what Yoruchi was used to, as she couldn't travel freely as she usually could, and had to take a lot more care when traveling. When she took in Naruto, she was of course at a complete lose at what to do, such as feeding, clothing, waking up at all hours of the night, and worst of all, nappy changing. But eventually, after much trial and error, everything worked out in the end. During the 8 years, Yoruchi had been traveling with Naruto between the world of the living and the shinobi world. This was to make sure that those from the shinobi world who would be looking for Naruto and the Soul Society who would be looking for Yoruchi would have trouble finding them. This of course made things difficult for Naruto in making friends, since it was often just Yoruchi and him and they were always on the move. But even still he didn't mind, since as far as he was concerned his mother was the only thing he needed. She even taught him how to read and write along with math's other things. Money was of course not a problem, since after adopting Naruto, Yoruchi made a quick visit to the Soul Society and borrowed a sizable amount for them to live comfortable lives with no trouble. When Naruto got older, Yoruchi started training Naruto in hand-to-hand fighting as well as to train up his body. Naruto loved training since his mother always made it fun, like by turning endurance training into a game of tag and stealth training in a hide-and-seek. Yoruchi also taught Naruto some things in the shinobi arts, since not only were the shinobi abilities powerful in their own right, but she believed that it was important for him to know where he came from. Teaching him, of course, had been slightly difficult since she could do it herself. But even still, she knew enough about chakra from her time in the shinobi to know how it worked and how it was used. When she started to teach Naruto about chakra, Naruto had trouble using it, for not only did Naruto possess an extremely high amount of Riryoku, spiritual power, but an equally high amount of chakra, hence he had trouble using it. Eventually, though, Naruto's control and use of his chakra got better, where he learned how to use it henge, transformation, Kami no Jutsu, body replacement technique, to walk up a tree using his chakra. But what Yoruchi had not figured out was why Naruto had such large reserves of Riryoku emanated such strong Ryatsu, spiritual pressure, which he emanated from time to time, although couldn't use it. This was why Yoruchi was heading for Urahara's shop, since she was certain that if anyone could figure what was wrong with Naruto and why he even had such high levels of Riryoku, it would be Kisuke. Eventually, they arrived at Urahara's shop, but when Naruto saw the store, he was far from impressed. "Is this at Ka-chan?" asked Naruto. "Yes, it is Naruto-chan," replied the dark-skinned woman, where she then opened the door and entered the shop with Naruto. As soon as they entered the store, they were greeted by two men who came out from the back of the store. The first was a tall, muscular, lightly tan-skinned man with cornrowed-shaped hair and a large handlebar mustache, which was connected to his long sideburns. His attire consists of a white muscle shirt with regular pants and a blue apron, and wore a pair of rectangular-shaped glasses. The second was a tall, light-skinned man with gray eyes, messy light blonde hair that had strands framing the sides of the face and hanging between his eyes and chin stubble. He wore a bucket-shaped hat with green and white stripes. He also wore a dark green shirt and pants, topped with a black coat with a white diamond pattern along its bottom half, along with traditional Japanese wooden sandals. As soon as the two men saw Yoruchi and Naruto, the tall blonde-haired man cried, "Yoruchi," before running over to greet his oldest and dearest friend in a tight hug. "Greetings, Yoruchi-sama. It is good to see you again," greeted the other man, as he slowly walked over to Yoruchi and the others. "It's good to see you to Kisuke, Tensai," replied Yoruchi with a smile, after Urahara let him go. "I'm assuming that this is your son Naruto," spoke Tensai as he turned to the small blonde boy, who was sticking close to his adoptive mother, as he was slightly intimidated by the large man. "Yes, say hello to your uncle Tensai," Naruto replied Yoruchi. "Hello," said Naruto nervously, where the large name Tensai gave a brief smile and panted Naruto gently on the head. "Hello, young man. It's very nice to meet you." "Well, aren't you the handsome young man? Here, would you like a lollipop?" said Urahara as he held out a large lollipop. "It's quite nice, as it's raspberry flavor." Seeing the lollipop, Naruto slowly reached out to it and took it and put it in his mouth. Naruto, what do you say to your uncle Kisuke? Said Yoruchi as she looked down at her adopted son. Thanks, Mr. Sandalhat. Yoruchi just smirked at Naruto's nickname for Kisuke, while Tensai chuckled slightly. Even Urahara himself smiled at the name, as he didn't mind being called that, where he then told Naruto he was welcome. Once the introductions were all done, Tensai led Naruto to one of the side rooms, where there was a television, and turned it on and allowed Naruto to watch some animes. Once Naruto was occupied, Tensai made some tea and brought it to the main back room, where Kisuke and Yoruchi were sitting and waiting for him. As Tensai poured the tea into their cups, Kisuke decided to start things off. So Yoruchi, do you care to tell what is going on? When you first wrote to me asking for the Jigai, your letter was rather vague, to say the least, not to mention surprising when you said you had adopted a baby boy. Yeah, I bet it was, laughed Yoruchi, as she only wished she could have seen Kisuke's face when he read the letter. So tell me, why is it that you need to see us, Yoruchi? Asked Yoruchi. I'm here because I need your help, Kisuke, and it involves Naruto, Yoruchi answered. Is there something wrong with the young man? Asked Tensai. Well, not exactly, but Naruto isn't a normal boy, as he is from Area 36, or as you both known it as, the Shinobi World, explained Yoruchi, which surprised the two men. The Shinobi World, well now, that is certainly interesting, commented Kisuke, as he scratched his chin and had a thoughtful look on his face. But how did you enter the Shinobi World? I was under the impression that all Senkamen, World Penetration Gate, that led to the Shinobi World were sealed off, stated Tensai. Oh, I know a few back doors in and out of places, answered Yoruchi with a knowing smile. Well, this is interesting, but there's something you're not telling us, Yoruchi, such as why did you even take Naruto in? No offense, but you're not the type of person to simply take in a child for just any reason, and what do you expect me to do? Stated Urahara. At hearing this, Yoruchi just smirked before replying. Tell me, Kisuke, what can you tell me about the creatures called Biju? Well, back when I was first setting up Technological Development Department, I came across some of the records on the Shinobi World. From what I understand, they are creatures made out of the same energy that can only be found in the Shinobi World. This energy, if I am not mistaken, is called chakra, and according to the records, these Biju's power is on par with Aminos, although their intelligence is no greater than that of a wild beast, not unlike Jillian, answered Kisuke before continuing. There are about 9 of them now, although originally there was only one, which the people of the Shinobi World called the Jubi. But it was eventually sealed in a human, who was the byproduct of one of the Soul Society experiments on some of the people of the Shinobi World and gained what they called a bloodline. There he used his power to seal creature within him. When the Soul Society learned of this, they tried to capture the man in hope of learning more about his power and to study the Jubi. But remarkably, the man proved too powerful, where he defeated the 5 captains, the dozen or so lieutenants that were sent to capture him. It was because of this that Central 46 decided to employ an arms reach policy with the Shinobi World, due to their concern of the power of these bloodlines. Later, this concern of bloodlines would help Central 46's decision in ordering that the Shinobi World being sealed off. But still, from what I understand, when this man who sealed the Jubi in him was dying, he used his power to divide the creature's power into 9 other creatures, creating the 9 other Biju. To prevent the Jubi from being released, or allowing anyone else, such as the Soul Society, from capturing it and using it for their own mean. After hearing Kisuke recount on what he knew about the Biju, Yoruchi could only smile, as there were very few things that Kisuke did not know about. Well, since you already know that much about them, I guess it saves us some time, since to put simply Naruto is like that man, who are called Jinchuriki in the Shinobi World, said Yoruchi, where she then went on to explain what she knew about Jinchuriki and how they came to be. After hearing all this, Kisuke mulled over with what he had learned, where he had to admit it was a rather interesting way of harnessing the power of the Biju, since by placing it in a child, they can train the child in using the Biju powerful effectively into its full potential, while at the same time making sure the child is loyal to the leader by have the child be related to them. He also now understood why Yaruchi felt the desire to take Naruto in, given how Jinchuriki were regarded by most people in their own villages. "What Biju does Naruto-kun have?" asked Bucket Hat Wearing Man. "He has the Kyubi no Yoko, nine-tailed fox, the strongest of the 9 Biju," replied Yaruchi. "Although as interesting as this is, Yaruchi, I still do not see why you require my help," said Kisuke. "I'm here because I need your help. Since when I first found Naruto, I sensed a large amount of spiritual pressure coming from him, and he can see me without my Jigai. HHMIC. So you want me to examine him to see why he has such a large amount of spiritual power in him?" answered Kisuke, where Yaruchi just nodded. "Well then," said Kisuke as he put his folded fan down on the table. "Let's get started, shall we?" A few days later. For the next couple of days, Kisuke used his machines to examine Naruto, both inside and out, and gathered as much data as he could, while at the same time making sure that none of the examination hurt Naruto. He had also studied the information he had received from Yaruchi about chakra, how it worked, and about bloodlines and shinobi clan, which she had attained from her visits to the shinobi world from shinobi villages. Once Kisuke had finished his examination on Naruto, he brought his results to Yaruchi. "Well, Yaruchi, I've to say, your son Naruto is quite the anomaly even for his own people," replied Kisuke with an amused smile. "What do you mean?" asked the dark-skinned woman. "Well, it seems your son has 3 sources of power. The first is his own chakra, the second chakra that comes from the Kyubi, which is similar in some ways to a Hollow's power. The third power is his spiritual power, and I must say it quite large for a boy, let alone a normal human to have." Yaruchi only nodded at this, as she already knew all of this. "Yes, I'm aware of that, Kisuke, but what I'm wondering about is why Naruto has so much spiritual power and is able to use spiritual pressure." "Well, I have an answer for that. You see, as I was performing Naruto-kun's tests, I hacked into the archive storage systems of the Technological Development Department without Kwatsuchi-kun knowing. A rather impressive feat, if I do say so myself," replied Kisuke as he opened his fan and laughed to himself at his own brilliance. "Kisuke, what did you find?" asked the annoyed Yaruchi. Now Yaruchi, calm down, I was getting there," replied Urahara as he tried to calm his friend down, as she could be rather impatient at times. "As I was saying, after I hacked into the archives, I started to look over the records kept by the head of the scientific team who performed the experiments on people from the shinobi world. Now, as you know, the original purpose of the scientific team was to study the phenomenon that was chakra in the hopes of replicating the shinobi's abilities. But after seeing their attempts fail, the head of the scientific team, Nagao Sanasuke, attempted to go another direction by combining a chakra with a shinigami in the hopes of creating a shinigami-shinobi hybrid," explained Kisuke. When Yaruchi heard this, she was naturally surprised at someone from the Soul Society trying something like that. But even still, she wondered how this affected Naruto, since this all happened long before he was born. But before she could ask, Kisuke continued with his explanation. Now, naturally, when the Central 46 learned of this, they immediately halted the experiments and ordered that information on the experiments and on the shinobi world to be sealed away and that all the Senkamen leading to the shinobi world be cut off. But not everyone followed with this order, explained Kisuke. "What do you mean?" asked Yaruchi. "Well, it seems that the head of the scientist team did not agree with Central 46 decision and made a copy of all his team data, after which he then fled the Soul Society to the shinobi world to continue his research." "Did they ever find him?" "Oh, they did. But according to the reports about him, when the Soul Society found him, he wasn't exactly himself anymore." "Huh," said Yaruchi. "Well, according to what I've learned, it seems that Nagao first attempted to make a shinobi hybrid by using himself as the test subject, since there were no other shinigami with him to test on. His experiments, although, had an unfortunate side effect, where he inadvertently mutated himself," said Urahara. "Once the Soul Society found him and saw what he had become, they decided to banish him into a pocket dimension that lies between the Soul Society and the shinobi world, to remain there for all time." So you're saying that Naruto's spiritual power is a result of Nagao's experiments, spoke Yaruchi. I believe so, replied Kisuke. But how is that possible? All of that happened long before Naruto or his parents were even born, stated the former Shohoin heiress. Well, according to the data that the Soul Society confiscated after they caught Nagao, it seems that he was very close to actually succeeding in creating a Shinigami, shinobi hybrid, where after his failed attempt to combine chakra with a Shinigami, he instead attempted alter a human's body so that it could use both chakra and Ryoryoku. He partially succeeded in doing so, where some members of a clan of shinobi who he had experimented on showed signs in having high levels of spiritual power. Furthermore, the members of the clan seemingly possessed a much greater lifespan than a normal person. You mean Naruto's birth mother clan, the Uzumaki, stated Yaruchi, which Kisuke confirmed with a nod. Yes, but as I said, he only partially succeeded, since despite possessing spiritual power, Naruto's ancestors couldn't use it, as there was some kind of block that prevented them from accessing it. But before Nagao could solve the problem, the Soul Society found him and halted his experiments, answered Kisuke. But if that's true, how did Naruto unlock his spiritual energy? Asked Yaruchi. I'm not entirely sure, answered Kisuke, but when I studied Naruto Koen's seal, I found trace amounts of foreign spiritual energy in it. Meaning, well, if I were to guess, I would say that another Shinigami sent some of his or her power into Naruto's body, where it unlocked his dormant spiritual energy, not unlike a key opening the door, replied Kisuke. But that doesn't make any sense. Why would another Shinigami be there? As there's no way they could have known I was in the shinobi world. Not to mention, why would they even send some of their spiritual energy into Naruto's body? Said Yaruchi. I'm afraid I cannot answer that, answered Kisuke honestly. After remaining silent for several minutes, Yaruchi decided to ask Urahara for one other favor. Kisuke, if you don't mind, there is one other thing I want to ask you to do, which is also the other reason why I came here. And what is that? Asked the curious Kisuke. I want you to help Naruto to gain the powers of a Shinigami, Yaruchi stated. Upon hearing this, both Kisuke and Tessai's eyes widened slightly in surprise. Yaruchi-sama, are you sure you want to do this? As you know, there are only two processes for a normal human being and become a Shinigami, said Tessai. As it's only a matter of time before Aizen eventually learns about Naruto, as Naruto is the first ever Shinigami shinobi hybrid and has one of the Biju within him. If Naruto is to have any chance of defending himself against Aizen or Hollows, who would be after his high spiritual power, then he'll need the power of a Shinigami to do it. Besides, Naruto has stated several times to me that he wishes to become a Shinigami to fight Hollows, and trust me when I say this. Once he's set his mind to something, he won't give up on it. Hummed Kisuke. You might be right, Yaruchi, as Naruto Koen could indeed be a powerful ally or enemy to Aizen if he learns to control his powers correctly. But how exactly do you want Naruto to gain the powers of a Shinigami? Was there only two methods for a living person to do so, stated Urahara. I want you to use the method you came up with, Kisuke, replied Yaruchi. Are you sure about that, Yaruchi, as you know how dangerous that could be? I'm aware of the risks, but I know Naruto can make it. He's stronger than you might think. I don't doubt that, but wouldn't the other method be easier, Kisuke replied. No, this way is better, as if I give Naruto some of my own power, it will limit him. By using your method, he will gain his own powers and be able to use his own vast reserves, answered Yaruchi. Very well then, if you're sure of this, we'll begin tomorrow, replied Kisuke. The several days later, after deciding to help Naruto gain the powers of a Shinigami, Yaruchi and Kisuke began Naruto's training, where they separated Naruto's soul from his body and began his endurance training so he could use his spirit form. For the next 2 days, Yaruchi attacked Naruto, forcing to run and dodge all her attacks and run all around the underground training room. Fortunately, thought the training wasn't too hard for Naruto, since he was used to this kind of training with his mother when training in hand-to-hand combat. Once Naruto had passed the first phase of the training, They began the next phase where they cut Naruto's chain of fate and bind Naruto's arms. After which they placed him and Tessai together in a large pit, so to allow the encroachment to begin uninterrupted. This was of course the part that Yoruichi was most worried about, since if things didn't go right, then her son would turn into a hollow. As the hours passed by, Yoruichi continued to watch over Naruto from the edge of the pit, waiting to see what happens. Nervous? Asked Kisuke as he sat next to his oldest friend, who was biting her nails as she looked down at her adopted son, a habit she had developed as soon as the second phase of the exam began. Wouldn't you be? Yoruichi replied. Probably, but remember this was your idea, answered Kisuke as he brought his folded fan up to his mouth. I know, responded Yoruichi, and that's what makes it so difficult, as I'm risking his life. Seeing the worried look of Yoruichi's face, Kisuke placed his hand on Yoruichi's right shoulder. Don't worry, like you said, Naruto-kun is strong, he assured Kisuke with a reassuring smile, where Yoruichi just smiled in response. So how long has it been? Asked the dark-skinned woman. About 69 hours. There's still time that this may work, answered Kisuke, where as soon as he said this, they suddenly heard Naruto starting to scream in pain and an immense amount of spiritual pressure coming from him. Naruto, cried Yoruichi with worry, as she saw his chain fall apart and a hole appear in his chest, along with a hollow mask forming around the blonde boy's face. Seeing this, Yoruichi was about to jump down to her son, but before she could, Kisuke grabbed hold of her arm and stopped. Kisuke, what are you doing? Let me go. I have to help Naruto, cried Yoruichi. You can't, Yoruichi. He's gone too far to you to stop this, said Urahara. You can't expect me to just stand here and watch my son become a hollow, rounded the purple-haired woman. Listen, Yoruichi, I know you're worried about him, but there's still a chance this can work. Look at him. Normally, when a person changes into a hollow, their body explodes and changes into a hollow. But that isn't happening with him. His mask is forming first and his body staying intact. That means he's fighting the change, and he could still become a Shinigami. We just have to wait. At hearing this, Yoruichi just gripped her left hand tightly to form a fist and started down at her adopted son in worry Naruto. Inside Naruto's inner world. Soon after his transformation began, Naruto blanked out from the pain, after which he began to hear several voices saying out his name. Eventually, he found himself on a large white beach with palm trees behind him and a vast open sea in front of him. As he looked around, the scenery reminded Naruto of a place he and his mother went when they were on holiday. But when he looked up, instead of seeing clear blue sky, there were dark, rumbling storm clouds. Where am I? Naruto asked out loud as he looked around. As soon as Naruto has asked this, a massive surge of water erupted into the air, where Naruto then heard a massive roar. The water then formed up and took the shape of a gigantic, serpentine dragon made out of water, with large wings and glowing red eyes. At seeing this, Naruto immediately took a step back in shock, but before he could fully comprehend what was happening, he then heard a massive screech-like cry coming from above him. When he looked up, Naruto saw a gigantic, beautiful white bird flying above him, where it slowly flew down and landed on the beach to Naruto's left side, a few meters away from him. Once the giant white bird landed on the beach, Naruto suddenly heard a loud crackle of thunder, after which there was a sudden flash of light, and large bolt of lightning struck the ground to Naruto's right a few feet away from him. As soon as the flash of light was gone, Naruto saw a tall man with short black hair, with an eye patch over his right eye standing in the very spot where the lightning bolt struck. The man wore dark samurai-like armor with a short sleeve, high-collar blue coat over the armor, and carried a long katana on his left hip side. What the hell are you guys? Where am I? Asked Naruto, who didn't know what to make of this situation. Is that all you can say, brat? TSK, I don't believe this. He doesn't even know who we are, spoke the samurai-like man as he folded, as if he were annoyed that Naruto didn't know who they were. That's enough, Reo, Thunder King, The boy is young and is only just coming into his power. He could not hear our voice until now, spoke the giant white bird in a clearly feminine voice, although when she said the samurai-like man's name Naruto heard nothing. Kochi, spring wind, is correct, Reo. It is not his fault. Besides, we do not have time to argue amongst ourselves right now, said the water dragon in a deep, echoing voice, where like before, when the water dragon said their names Naruto heard nothing. TSK. Fine, whatever. I'm just saying that's it rather pathetic that he doesn't even know who we are. Who the hell are you guys? What are you? Asked Naruto. My name is Watatsumi, Water God, replied the water dragon before turning to the white bird. This is Kochi, and the one in front of you is Reo. As to what we are, to put it simply, we're a part of you. We're one, and yet we are separate from one another. Huh? Why did you say I didn't hear your names? And what do you mean? Asked Naruto, not hearing their names or really understanding what Watatsumi was talking about. See, like I told you, he can't even hear our names. It's pathetic, scoffed Reo. Hey, who the hell are you calling pathetic Hitatsu team? Bastard Cyclops, cried Naruto as he glared at Reo. After hearing what Naruto called him, Reo walked over to Naruto and glared directly at the young blonde. What did you just call me, you little brat? Asked Reo with a dangerous tone and glare that would have many others with her. But Naruto wasn't like most people, as he wouldn't back down when insulted, no matter who they were. You heard me, team, and if you want to fight, then I'm more than ready. I'll kick your ass all over this place, declared Naruto as he glared back at Reo. For a moment or two, Naruto and Reo just glared at one another, but soon after Reo stopped glaring and smirked at Naruto. Huh, you might not be much to look at, brat, but you got guts, not to mention quite a mouth on you. You might not be so bad after all, said Reo as he roughed Naruto's hair a bit, which annoyed Naruto a little. So what are you guys? Naruto asked. We're your Zanpakuto spirits, child, answered the giant white bird named Kochi. Huh, Zanpakuto spirits. But wait, I thought Shinigami could only have one Zanpakuto spirit, stated Naruto, as he remembered what his mother told him about Shinigami. That is incorrect, as Shinigami can have more than one Zanpakuto spirit. But even then, you're different. For you see, each of us have our own unique powers, separate from one another, explained Watatsumi. Wait, so you mean to say that I have 3 Zanpakuto? Naruto said in surprise. Yes and no, for although we have separate abilities, we all reside in a single vessel, answered Kochi. This is awesome, declared Naruto with excitement at the idea of him having 3 Zanpakuto. So are you guys returned as Zanpakuto or something? TSK. We aren't some mindless tools that will do whatever you want us to do, brat. We have our own will and won't be forced to anything that we don't want to do. If you want us to help, you're going to have to treat us with some respect, said Reo, who was miffed that Naruto thought that he could boss them around. Oh, sorry, said Naruto. It is all right, child, but there is something you need to know. If you truly wish to use our powers, you must first awaken your own Shinigami powers and do so before this world collapses, Kochi explained. What do you mean? Asked a worried Naruto. Look up at the sky, brat, said Reo, as he pointed up where Naruto saw the large storm clouds covering the sky. That is no ordinary storm. It is being caused by the collapsing our world. Soon enough, both this world and all of us will cease to exist, and you'll become a hollow. The only way to prevent this is, and that is for you to awaken your Shinigami powers. But how do we do that? Asked Naruto. You must find your Shinigami powers, which takes the shape of your Zanpakuto, said Watatsumi. But where do I find that? Naruto asked, but instead of answering, Watatsumi re-merged with the water. Reo disappeared in a flash of light, and Kochi flew away. Where are you guys going? I need your help to find my powers, cried Naruto. After Watatsumi and the others left him, Naruto decided to start looking for his powers. But before he could even try, a gigantic wave suddenly rose out of the sea in front of him. Naruto, of course, tried to run away, but was quickly enveloped by the massive wave of water. Soon after, Naruto found himself floating underwater and surrounded by thousands of white boxes. Realizing that he was underwater, Naruto immediately started to hold his breath and started to try and swim upward. But as he tried, he quickly realized that he was going anywhere. What are you doing, Naruto? Have you already forgotten that this is your mind, where it does not matter whether you're underwater or not? Spoke Wadetsumi's voice out of nowhere. After hearing this, Naruto realized that Wadetsumi was right, where he stopped holding his breath and began to breathe normally. After which he started to swim around, opening as many boxes as he could in an attempt to find his Shinigami powers. But every time he opened one of the boxes, he found nothing inside. This is impossible. I can't find my Shinigami powers in all these boxes. There are too many of them, stated Naruto. You must, Naruto, or else we are all doomed, spoke Wadetsumi in a forceful tone. But how? I'm just one person and there are 1,000 if not millions of boxes to look through, say Naruto. Naruto, you can do this, but you must first calm yourself and focus, said Kochi's voice out of nowhere, much like Wadetsumi. Listening to Kochi's voice, Naruto started to take deep breaths and began to calm down. Now listen to me, Naruto. You must expand your senses. You cannot rely on sight, hearing, or even touch. You must use your own natural spiritual energy to search for your Shinigami power by sensing its spirit energy. By doing that, you'll be able to find the box that contains your Shinigami power. Following Kochi's instructions, Naruto closed his eyes and began to concentrate and focus on expanding his senses outward to find the box with his Shinigami powers. Within minutes, Naruto located the box, as the spirit energy that emanated from it felt different from the others. Acting quickly, Naruto honed in on the box and swam towards it as quickly as he could. Once he had grabbed hold, Naruto opened it, where he then found an odd-looking sword handle in the box. Good work, Naruto, you found us, said Kochi. But as soon as she said this, a massive black hole appeared from underneath Naruto and began to suck everything in. What the hell are you waiting, kid? Pull us the fuck out before you turn into a hollow, yelled Ryo's voice. Not needing to be told twice, Naruto grabbed hold of the sword handle and pulled it out of the box. In the outside world, in the real world, Yaruchi and the others watched as Naruto slowly turned into a hollow. As he did, Tensai began to struggle to hold Naruto with his Kido spell. Yaruchi-sama, I do not know how much longer I can hold him, shouted Tensai. Naruto, don't give in, fight it, cried Yaruchi. It was then, just as the hollow mask had completely covered Naruto's face, a massive explosion of spiritual energy erupted from Naruto, breaking Tensai's Kido spell and forcing Yaruchi and Kisuke to jump back a bit. As they jumped back, they saw something fly out of the pit and land right in front of them. When they looked up, they saw Naruto, wearing the uniform of a Shinigami, along with a hollow mask shaped like a smiling fox, covering his face, too. In his hand was an odd-looking sword handle, which had no blade on it. Before either Kisuke or Yaruchi could say or do anything, the mask around Naruto's face started to crack and fall apart, revealing his face. But as soon as the mask broke, Naruto collapsed onto the ground. Naruto! Cried Yaruchi as she raced over to her adopted son and knelt down to him and lifted his head on her knees. Is he all right? Asked Tensai, who had just climbed out of the pit and walked over to them. Yes, should be fine. He just exhausted from the transformation, answered Urahara with a smile. It's truly remarkable that a boy his age was able to withstand and survive the transformation, commented Tensai. I must admit, there was a moment or two near the end where I thought he would turn into a hollow. Yes, well, as Yaruchi said, young Naruto-kun is stronger than he looks, replied Kisuke with a smile. As he watched his female friend smile down at the boy and gently brush some hair strands away from his forehead in a motherly-like fashion. Several hours later, when Naruto woke up, he found himself lying in a small room, staring at white ceiling with a blanket covering him. Well, hello, sleepyhead, spoke a familiar voice, where when Naruto turned his head slightly, he saw his mother smiling down on him. Ka-chan, said Naruto rather groggily, as he rubbed his eyes to wake himself up. How are you feeling, Naruto? Asked Yoruchi. Okay, I guess. But where's Uncle Sandal Hat and Mr. Giant Man? Asked Naruto, who quickly got his answer when the sliding door to the room opened up, revealing Kisuke and Tensai. Right here, Naruto-kun, said Kisuke as he waved his open fan in front of his face. And I must say, I'm very impressed with how you successfully gained the powers of Shinigami. How you mean I'm a Shinigami? Said Naruto in surprise as he pulled the blanket off him and found himself wearing the standard uniform of a Shinigami. After which he started to cheer and shout at how he was a Shinigami, just like his mother, and how he would now kick loads of hollows' butts. Soon enough, though, Yoruchi got Naruto to calm down and asked him to tell them what happened as he was slowly turning into a hollow and how he found his hidden power. For the next few minutes, Naruto went on to explain what happened in his inner world and how he met his 3 Zanpakuto spirits. When he finished, saying that Yoruchi and the others were surprised would have been a grave understatement. 3 separate Zanpakuto spirits in a single Zanpakuto. Yoruchi said out loud with serious look. I have heard Shinigami having dual spirits, especially if they have dual Bale-type Zanpakuto like Yukitake and Kairaku, but never anything like this. Indeed, this is a rather unusual development. Do you have any theories on this, Urahara-san? Asked Tensai. Well, the only explanation I can come up with is because of the experiments that Nagao-san did not Naruto-kun ancestors to create a Shinigami shinobi hybrid. Then again, Naruto could simply be an even bigger oddity than we had thought. But other than that, I don't have a clue, as there has never been someone like him before. Your son truly in a surprising individual, boho-ho-ho, remarked Urahara, as opened his fan again and waving it around, as he laughed at his own ignorance, which made Naruto wonder if the man was insane. But why is my Zanpakuto like this? Asked Naruto, as he held up his wooden sword hilt. The hilt design was a simple design with no guard, and a slightly large bottom at the end of the hilt with 3 red gems on it. 3. HHM. Well, if I understand what you told us correctly, Naruto-kun, even though your Zanpakuto spirits inhabit the same vessel, they each have their own unique powers and independent will. The form that your Zanpakuto has taken now is its sealed form and acts a neutral point for you to choose which spirit's power you wish to use. So you're saying that Naruto cannot use all 3 spirits at once, stated Yoruchi. No, exactly. Now, this is only a theory, but I believe the gems on the hilt of his sword handle represent his 3 Zanpakuto spirits and will most likely glow whenever he chooses which of them he wishes to use. Now, it may or may not be possible at a later point for him to use all 3 at once, but he will most likely have to learn to master all 3 Zanpakuto powers first before even trying something like that. After hearing all this, Yoruchi just nodded in understanding before turning to her adopted son, with a sweet-looking smile that for some reason made Naruto very nervous. While Naruto-chan, it seems that you'll have a lot of training ahead of you if you want to learn to use your Zanpakuto. Upon hearing this, Naruto gulped, as his mother could be quite brutally when it came to training. He became even more worried when both Tensai and Kisuke volunteered to help Naruto with his training. But regardless of what would happen in his training, he had already committed himself to the path of the Shinigami and wouldn't look back. Last time on Rogue Shinigami. Well, Naruto-chan, it seems that you have a lot of training ahead of you if you want to learn to use your Zanpakuto. Upon hearing this, Naruto gulped, as his mother could be quite brutally when it came to training. He became even more worried when both Tensai and Kisuke volunteered to help Naruto with his training. But regardless of what would happen in his training, he had already committed himself to the path of the Shinigami and wouldn't look back. 7 years, Tokyo City. Currently running around the streets of Tokyo, in the middle of the night, the spirit of a young woman was frantically searching for any place to hide from the things that were after her. As she ran through the streets, the women turned into a dark alleyway. As she ran through the alley, a large creature suddenly appeared in front of her from above and crash-landed on the ground. When the dust settled from the creature landing on the ground, the woman saw a massive, dark-skinned humanoid creature, with a muscular body and white mask shaped like a bull with horns on the side and a large hole in its chest. Seeing the creature, the woman tried to run back the way she came, but when she turned around, she saw two more creatures in front of her. Although neither were as big as the first one, they were still quite big compared to a normal person. The first of the two had a similar build as the big one. He had green skin and long gray hair. On his muscular arms, there are two spines which were obviously used for combat. His legs were covered in brown fur. His mask had a skull-like appearance and a large horn on top and a hole in his abdomen. The second creature was slightly taller than its partner, with the upper body of a man, with a small hole in its neck and the lower body of a snake. Seeing that she couldn't go back, the woman started to look for any other ways to escape. That was when she saw a spider-like creature crawling down from left and wall. The creature had 6 legs and skull-like face with a hole in it back. "Kuaha! What a tasty morsel," laughed the spider-like hollow. "Yes, she should do nicely," said the serpent-like hollow. "Please, just leave me alone. I didn't do anything," pleaded the woman as she pressed her back into the right wall. "Don't worry, we won't hurt you much, Kuaha," said the hollow with the spikes on his arms, as he began to laugh. As the 4 creatures closed in on the woman, the largest of the 4 hollows suddenly let out a massive roar. "Ah-h-h-h-h-h-h-h." When the other 3 hollows turned, they saw their fellow hollow suddenly split in 2 before disintegrating. "What the hell?" cried the spiked-arm hollow. "What happened to Oxbone?" asked the serpent-like hollow. "I don't know," replied the spike-armed hollow as he looked around for the perpetrator, where he suddenly noticed something missing. "Wait, where did the woman go?" "She's up there, look," cried the spider-like hollow. When the others looked, they saw the woman up on the roof, overlooking the alley, being carried by an average tall person about 5'5", wearing a black hooded coat. "Who is that?" asked the spider-like hollow. "I don't know, but whoever he is, he's dead," replied the spiked-armed hollow, where they jumped after the mysterious hooded person, who disappeared in a blur. For the next few minutes, the 3 hollows chased after the mysterious stranger, jumping across the rooftops of buildings, until eventually they came to a stop in a large open park with trees all around and a small playground. When the serpent-like hollow and the spiked-armed hollow landed in the open park, they saw the black-clad person place the young woman behind a slide and tell her to stay there and not to move. After making sure that the woman was safe, the hooded stranger then slowly walked towards the 2 hollows. Once he was only a few meters from them, he then took out a short Tonto blade from underneath his black coat. "So who's first?" asked the hooded stranger. The serpent hollow was the first to answer this challenge, where he spat out a large glob of mud-like substance, which the hooded stranger avoided, by sidestepping to the left, where it flew by him and hit the top corner of a swing, causing it to melt. Seeing this, the hooded stranger made a note to avoid the substance, after which he then charged straight at the 2 hollows. The serpent-like hollow fired several more globs of the acid-like substance at the hooded stranger, but each time the hooded stranger skillfully evaded them. Seeing that his partner was having no luck with hitting the hooded stranger, the spiked-armed hollow charged forward and attempted to stab the hooded person with his arm spike. But before his arm spike could hit the black-clad figure, the mysterious stranger disappeared right before his eyes. He then reappeared right on the hollow's outstretched arm and used it as a springboard to jump over the hollow to his partner behind him, whom the stranger then cut in half, much like their other comrade earlier on. "Snakeface N.O.," cried the spike-arm hollow after seeing another of his comrades. "You pay for that, you bastard," cried the enraged hollow as he tried to stab the hooded stranger with his spikes. But like before, the hooded stranger avoided the attack, where he sidestepped the stab and with a quick flick of his hand, cutting the hollow's arm right off. "Grrrrhhhh, my arm," roared the hollow in pain as he held his now right stump of an arm. Before he could say or do anything more, the hooded stranger then delivered a powerful kick to the face that cracked the hollow's mask slightly and sent him flying several meters away. But as soon as the hooded stranger landed back on the ground, the woman he was protecting suddenly shouted out, "Look out! Before the black-clad stranger could fully turn around, the spider-like hollow suddenly appeared out of the ground and ran one of his claw-like hands right through the hooded stranger's back and out his chest. I got Yoha, laughed the spider-like hollow before a look of surprise and confusion appeared of its face as the black-clad fighter faded away. When this happened, the hooded fighter reappeared behind the spider-like hollow and said Utsasimi, cicada, before he raised his tanto and sliced the top portion of the hollow's head off, where the rest of its body quickly disintegrated. Damn you, roared the spiked-armed hollow, first oxbone, then snake face, and now web. I kill you. You're welcome to try, replied the hooded stranger with a smirk, before he and the spike-armed hollow charged at one another with phenomenal speed. To the woman that was watching the two of them fight, it ended as quickly as it had started, as both the hollow and her mysterious savior disappeared within the blink of an eye and reappeared at opposite ends from where they started, with their backs to one another. For a moment or two, neither of them moved, until the mysterious stranger asked the hollow's name, where the hollow simply replied sword arm before a long diagonal cut appeared, going down from his left shoulder to his right hip. This caused the top right part of his body to slide off the rest of his body, along with the top portion of his head, which was cut off as well from another slash. Once the last of the hollows was dealt with, the hooded stranger sheathed his tanto back into its sheath on his right leg, after which he slowly walked over to the woman, who was still hiding behind the slide. You can come out now. You're safe, spoke the hooded stranger calmly. Are you sure? Asked the woman as she slowly came out from behind the slide. Yes, I am, replied the hooded stranger, where he then took out an unusual-looking sword handle with 3 red gems on the bottom hilt. Vuvuvuka. Dubich, what are you doing? Asked the woman with some fear. Don't worry, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm just sending you to a place where you will be safe and can move on, said the hooded stranger, after which he tapped the bottom hilt of his sword handle onto the woman's forehead, where she was teleported away to the afterlife. Once the woman was gone, the hooded stranger placed his sword handle onto his belt, but before he could walk away, he suddenly heard some clapping. Hearing the clapping, the hooded fighter immediately readied himself for an attack, since he didn't sense anyone, until the person had started clapping. Well done indeed. Those hollows never stood a chance, spoke the man coming out of the shadows of the trees, wearing a green and white striped bucket hat. Uncle Hat and Clogs, said the hooded stranger, as he pulled back his hood to show his face, revealing his spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, and his faint whisker shape marks on his cheeks, which could just barely be seen. It's good to see you too, Naruto. You have improved a great deal since I last saw you, said Kisuke. Not enough. If I still can't sense you, said Naruto, with a slight smile. So what is it that you want? Oh, come now, Naruto-kun. You make it sound like I'm always up to something. Can't I come to visit the son of an old friend every now and again? Said Kisuke as he waved his fan in denial. You're always up to something, Uncle Kisuke. Plus it hasn't long since Kachan left to visit you. So I know there's something up, Naruto answered. At this, Kisuke just smiled and spent the next hour or so explaining why he was here. So let me get this straight. You've helped this Ichigo guy gain the powers of a Shinigami and helped these 2 other people to use their special powers. After which you then sent them, along with Kachan and a Quincy, to storm the Soul Society to rescue this rookie person, who is going to be executed for transferring her Shinigami powers to Ichigo earlier on. You got it. That pretty much the whole story, replied Kisuke before he was knocked to the ground by a punch in the face by the young Shinigami. Ow, 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 ow. Oh, why did you punch me in the face? Whined Urahara as he held his face in pain. That's for not telling me all this sooner, annoyed Naruto, as he was peeved that he was kept in the dark about all this. Gomane-san, Naruto-kun, but we were rather busy with training Kurosaka-kun and the others that we didn't have time to see Eiga, said Kisuke before he received another fist to the face from Naruto. My nose, cried the whimpering man as he held his nose in pain. Don't give me any of that crap. All you had to do was make a simple call, text, or email. Hell, even a fucking letter or carrier pigeon would have done the job, stated the angry Naruto. I'm not stupid, Uncle Kasuke. This is all Kaa-chan's doing. She doesn't want me on this mission because she's afraid I go after Aizen or the others. At this, Kasuke just sighed and picked himself up. Yes, Naruto-kun, you're correct. I had originally wanted to bring you in from the start. But your mother told me not to, given your strong dislike of the Soul Society and Aizen for what happened to us. At this, Naruto just scoffed, as he never made it secret about dislike of the Soul Society or Aizen, since it was because of Aizen that his mother was forced to go into exile after he framed Kasuke and Tensai for his crimes. He also disliked the Soul Society, since he found their ruling government Central 46 to be ignorant, arrogant, inflexible, and heartless, especially when it came to their so-called laws, many of which Naruto found to be unjust. He even disliked the Shinigami of the Soul Society, since he found many of them to be nothing more than mindless lapdogs, doing whatever their masters tell them. So if Kaa-chan told you not to bring me in on this rescue mission, why are you here and telling me all this? Asked Naruto. Well, to put it simply, despite what your mother thinks, I believe the mission has the best chance of succeeding with you there to help, explained Urahara. Naruto, of course, just smirked at this. You do know that when Kaa-chan finds out what you did, she'll kill you. At this, Kasuke just waved his fan and laughed nervously, as he hadn't missed that fact. Yes, perhaps when you meet your mother, you could say that you forced it out of me or something. Naruto just smiled at this, where the two of them left the park together, with Ichigo and the others. After their failed attempt in entering Siriidei, Yuruchi brought Ichigo and the gang to Kakaku's house and introduced them to her. After convincing Kakaku to help them, Kakaku showed them how she would help them get into the Siriidei. It didn't take long for Yuryu, Chad, and Orheim to learn how to create the force fields they would need to help them get through the Siriidei barrier. Unfortunately, Ichigo wasn't having as much luck as he struggled to learn how to create and form the force field. After finishing their dinner, Chad, Orheim, and Yuryu came back to the training room to watch Ichigo as he tried to form his force field. As they watched Ichigo continue with his training, they suddenly heard some screaming coming from outside the room. Believing they were under attack, Ichigo and the others readied themselves for battle. As soon as they did, a beaten-up Ganju flew through the door and right into Ichigo, who was sent flying into the wall right behind him, along with Ganju. When Yuryu and the others turned to the now broken door, they saw a dark hooded stranger standing in the doorway. "Who the hell are you?" asked the Yuryu as he pointed his Quincy bow at the unknown figure who had now walked into the room. "Oh, Quincy, looks like I found the right place," commented the hooded stranger before he looked over at Ichigo, who was still seeing stars after Ganju collided with him. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit you there," the hooded person apologized. "I believe I asked you a question. Now tell us who?" asked Yuryu with the utmost seriousness. "My, aren't we the impatient one?" commented the hooded stranger, before he pulled back his hood to reveal his blonde, spiky hair and his face, revealing him to be Naruto. "Relax there, Four Eyes. I'm not here to fight. In fact, I'm here to help you." "I find that hard to believe, given what you just did to Ganju there," answered Yuryu. "Him?" asked Naruto as he looked over at the still dazed Ganju, who was on top of Ichigo. "That's his own fault. When I arrived here and met him at the front door, he stopped me from going in. Even after I explained that I was a friend and that I was here to see someone, he refused to let me in. He then went on to blab about how punk-ass Shinigami like me weren't welcome here, and how he was the #1 Shinigami hater, as well as say some rather hurtful things." "You're a Shinigami?" asked Yuryu with a frown. "I am, but I'm not with the Siriidei, so you don't have to worry," replied Naruto. Yuryu was of course not convinced by this, but before he could ask Naruto any more questions, Naruto disappeared and reappeared right in front of Chad and Orheim. Naturally, both Orheim and Chad were shocked by Naruto's sudden appearance in front of them, where they took a step back in surprise. Even Yuryu was surprised by Naruto's speed, where all he could think was fast. "Damn, you're a big one," commented Naruto as he looked up at Chad with a raised eyebrow, before he turned to Orheim, where his eyebrows rose even higher when he stared at Orheim's curvy figure, but more specifically at her chest. As Naruto stared at Orheim's chest, the orange-haired girl started to feel uncomfortable at how Naruto was staring at her chest. But before Orheim could say anything, Naruto lifted up his finger and moved to poke the girl's chest. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" cried the red-faced Quincy when he saw what Naruto was going to do. "What?" asked Naruto in confusion, as didn't understand why Yuryu was so upset. "I'm just seeing if they're for real. It's not perverted or anything." "That is perverted!" cried Yuryu in outrage. "You can't just pee-pee poke a girl like that." "Hey, I'm just curious, that's all. Since the girl has a figure and breast that most women would kill for," responded Naruto. This, of course, caused Yuryu to go even redder in embarrassment at the mention of Orheim's breasts and figure. Chad, on the other hand, just looked away, although had a slight blush on his face as well. "But hey, listen, do any of you guys know where my MOT ga?" Naruto asked, but before he could finish, he was suddenly pulled away from the others by Ichigo, who grabbed Naruto by the front collar of his coat and lifted him up so that he looked Naruto right in the face. "You bastard! I should beat the shit out of you for that," cried the angry Ichigo. "Oh hey kid," greeted Naruto. "Sorry again about that. I didn't mean to hit you with that, idiot." "No hard feelings?" "No hard feelings?" Ichigo said angrily. "You slammed me into a wall, and who the fuck are you calling kid? You're shorter than me, shrimp." "No, you idiot. Don't make fun of his height," cried Ganju, who was covered in lumps and bruises, as when he met Naruto, he had made fun of Naruto by calling him shorty. Needless to say, Naruto didn't take that comment well, where he proceeded to beat the shit out of Ganju, along with Koganehiko and Shirogane, who tried to stop Naruto. Sadly, though, for Ichigo, it was too late, as once he called Naruto shrimp, an evil-looking glint appeared in the blonde boy's eyes. He then grabbed Ichigo's right arm, which he was using to hold Naruto up, and twisted, forcing Ichigo to let go of him. The next thing Ichigo knew, he was on the floor with Naruto standing over him, digging his left heel into his lower back, while holding Ichigo's arm in arm lock, twisting it every few seconds, causing intense pain to the young Shinigami, both in his arm and in his lower back. "How do you like that now, huh?" asked Naruto with a sadistic smile on his face as he heard Ichigo scream in pain. "Who's the short one now? And as for calling you kid, you may think you're a big shot with your big-ass sword there, but you're nothing more than a greenhorn to me, since I've trained for years in my power, and as far as I'm concerned, you nothing more than a brat." This, of course, continued for the next few minutes, where Naruto continued to torture Ichigo until Yaruchi and Kakaku arrived. "What the fuck is going on in here?" cried Kakaku when she saw the scene. Naruto, of course, just looked up and smiled when he saw his mother, who was in her cat form, and Kakaku, where he simply said yo and waved his hand in greeting. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" asked Yaruchi in surprise. "I came to help, as do you really think I would let you invade the Suriidii without me and have all the fun?" replied Naruto with a grin. "I would hardly call invading Suriidii fun," spoke Yuryu, as he pushed his glasses back up. "Maybe not you, but I sure as hell think it would be," answered Naruto with a grin. "How did you know about this? Did Kisuk tell you?" asked Yaruchi. "Yep," replied Naruto as he twisted Ichigo's arm again, causing Ichigo to cry out in pain. "Uncle Hat and Clogs told me, since he thought the mission would have a better chance of succeeding if I helped as well." Yaruchi was, of course, not surprised by this, as she had already guessed that Kisuk was the one who told Naruto, since he was the only one who could have brought Naruto here. After she realized this, the former captain of Squad 2 made a mental note to kill her childhood friend. With Kisuk currently writing some notes on his newest experiment, the former captain of Squad 12 suddenly sneezed and then moaned, as his notes were now covered in snot. "Something wrong, boss?" asked Tezai when heard Urahara sneeze. "I don't think so. I just sneezed. Perhaps a beautiful maiden is talking about me," said Kisuk with a cheesy smile, believing his own lie. "Like that'll ever happen," thought Tezai. Well, don't worry, boss. I have some excellent medicine that will clear that cold up in no time. Kisuk, of course, tried to stop Tessai, saying that it wasn't a cold, it was just a sneeze. But his attempts fell on deaf ears, where Kisuk would be spending the next couple of hours in the bathroom with Naruto and the others. And may I ask what you're doing with Ichigo? Asked Yoruichi, already guessing what happened. I'm just showing Strawberry here the difference between him and me, replied Naruto, as he dug his heel once more into Ichigo's back, causing the orange-haired boy to scream in pain. He made fun of your height, didn't he? Asked Yoruichi with a sweat drop on the side of her head, where Yuryu and the others nodded their heads, telling her that Ichigo done so. Yoruichi, who the fuck is this kid? Kakaku asked. I believe you remember the topic of our earlier conversation, replied Yoruichi, where Kakaku's eyes widened briefly when she remembered it. So that him, huh? Asked Kakaku, where Yoruichi just nodded. Naruto, please let Ichigo go, as we don't have the time for this sort of thing, said Yoruichi. Naruto, of course, did what his mother asked, and let Ichigo go and allowed him to get back where the two of them glared at one another. Excuse me, Yoruichi-san, but who exactly is this person? Asked Yuryu. This is Naruto. He is an ally, and like you, Ichigo, he is Shinigami as well as a shinobi, replied Yoruichi, as she kept the part about Naruto being her son a secret. A shinobi, repeated Chad, as he wasn't sure how to respond to that. Wait, you mean like all those cool black suit-wearing guys in the movies who live in shadows and attack people? Answered Orihime with excitement, as she knew a lot about shinobi from all the martial arts films that she watched with Tatsuki. Not exactly. You see, Naruto here comes from another world, which is parallel to yours. In this world, the shinobi are very different and much more powerful than those you would see in movies. For you see, the shinobi of Naruto's world use a unique power called chakra, which grants them powers and abilities that rival those of a Shinigami, answered Yoruichi. Naturally, after hearing this, Ichigo and the others were surprised, but they quickly recovered where Yuryu decided to ask a question. If this is true, then why have we never seen or heard of these shinobis before? As I said, Naruto's world is separate from us and is unaware of the Soul Society existence. The only reason Naruto is here is because he has the powers of a Shinigami, explained Yoruichi. Okay, fine, I get that. But if that's the case, why the hell didn't you mention him sooner? And why did you want him to stay out of this mission? Ichigo asked. I'm afraid I can't answer that question right now, Ichigo. But I can assure you there was a good reason why I wanted Naruto to remain hidden, replied Yoruichi. After which she then gave her son a glance, who just nodded, stating he understood why she kept him in the dark about their mission to save Rukia. Annoyed slightly by not getting any answers, Ichigo turned to Naruto. So are you strong? Strong enough, replied Naruto. Well then, how about you, and I go out of here and now, and see how strong you really are, said Ichigo with an evil-looking grin as he pulled his sword out, as he was eager to deal some payback on Naruto. Your funeral, retorted Naruto with his own grin. Ekuro-seiken, I don't think you should fight here, spoke Orihime worriedly. Don't worry, Orihime, this won't take long, replied Ichigo as he readied himself. That it won't, said Naruto as he took out his Tanto sword from the sheath on his right leg. The two of them are too much alike, commented Yuryu with annoyance, where Chad just nodded in agreement. That enough, both of you. There will be no fighting here, spoke Yoruichi seriously, as this wasn't the time or the place for this sort of thing. Ichigo, listen to me. If you want to save Rukia, we'll need Naruto's help, and I can assure you Naruto is quite powerful and is someone you want as an ally. Since both Kisuk and I train Naruto, now, I suggest you stand down. That goes for you as well, Naruto. Upon hearing this, Ichigo relented, since technically Kisuk was the one who trained him, and if Naruto succeeded in surviving his training, then that meant Naruto had to be strong. Chad and Orihime were also convinced, since Yoruichi was the one who trained them in how to use their powers, and if Yoruichi said Naruto was strong, they believed it. Once Ichigo placed his sword back onto his back, Naruto sheathed his Tanto blade. Since he knew his mother was right, this wasn't the time or place to fight. Once both boys agreed to stand down, Naruto offered his hand in friendship to Ichigo, which he took. Yoruichi was of course pleased to see this, since together the two boys would be a force to be reckoned with. Several hours later, a few hours after Naruto arrived, Ichigo was finally able to create the force field around himself, but not before nearly destroying Kukaka home, resulting in her beating the crap out of Ichigo and her brother Ganju, who told Asuhigo what to do. Once everyone was ready, the group entered the spirit cannon and formed a large force field around himself, and were fired through the barrier that protected the Siriidii. Unfortunately, when they broke through the barrier, they were unable to hold the force field together and were separated from one another. Naruto was of course able to land on the ground without incident, but found himself alone with no sign of the others nearby. "So this is the Siriidii, huh?" commented Naruto after he jumped up to the top of the nearest building to have a good look around his surroundings. Well, look what we have here," commented an unknown male voice. When the Naruto turned around, he saw two Shinigami standing behind at the opposite end of the rooftop that he was standing on. "And here I thought today was going to be another dull day," remarked one of the Shinigami. The first was of the Shinigami was a tall and noticeably muscular man with pale skin, short spiky black hair, brown eyes, who wore bandages like a mask over the bottom half of his face. He carried a long Zanpakuto on his back and wore the standard uniform of a Shinigami, with its sleeves seemingly torn off, showing his muscular arms. The second was a feminine-looking Shinigami, who Naruto wasn't sure was a boy or a girl. The Shinigami was slightly taller than Naruto and had long black hair, pale skin, and large, dark brown eyes. The Shinigami had a slender frame and wore the stand Shinigami uniform and carried a short Zanpakuto on his right-left side hip. "Oh, and who are you?" asked Naruto calmly as he analyzed his two opponents, where he could tell that they seated officers given the spiritual pressure they were emanating. "The name is Momochi Zabuza, 4th seed of Squad 11, replied the man named Zabuza as he drew his Zanpakuto. "I am Yuki Haku, 5th seed of Squad 4, answered Haku. "So 4th and 5th seed officers. This should be interesting," thought Naruto, as he was sure they could both prove to be an interesting challenge. Although he did wonder why a seated officer from Squad 11 was hanging around with a seated officer from Squad, since he had heard that the members of Squad 11 detested those from Squad 4, believing that they were cowardly weaklings who got in the way. "Now if you could be so kind, will you tell us why you're here?" Haku asked the black-hooded teen. "To put simply, I'm here with some others to help save a Shinigami who is to be executed, a Kachiki Rukia." At hearing this, both Zabuza and Haku rose their eyebrows in surprise, since they had heard of the execution of the female Shinigami, who was said to be executed for giving a living human the powers of a Shinigami. "Are you friend with Rukia-san?" asked Haku, who had met the female Shinigami once or twice and found her to be a friendly individual. "No, never met her in my life," replied Naruto. "Then why the hell are you even coming to save her?" Zabuza asked, since it didn't make any sense to him. "I'm doing this as a favor for someone," answered Naruto. "And because it will piss off the top brass of the Siriidii," he explained with a smirk. "Well, unfortunately, you won't have that chance, kid, since you had the bad luck of running into us. But you still have two choices. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way," said Zabuza, as he readied his Zanpakuto, since he was hoping Naruto would choose the hard way, as like all members of Squad 11, he was itching for a good fight. Naruto, of course, did not disappoint him, as he drew his tanto from his leg sheath and readied himself. "Sorry, but I guess we're going to have to do this the hard way." "I was hoping you would say that," replied Zabuza with a grin behind his mask. "Haku, you stay out of this." "I will, Zabuza-sama," replied the young boy, knowing that like the rest of the members of Squad 11, Zabuza preferred to fight his battles alone. Before the battle could begin, Naruto suggested that they jump down to the ground, where they would have more room to fight. Zabuza, of course, had no problem with this, where the two of them jumped down to the ground, while Haku stayed up on the roof to watch the fight. As Zabuza and Naruto faced off against one another, Both Shinigami readied themselves and began to emanate large amounts of spiritual pressure. Watching from the rooftop, Haku was impressed with the spiritual pressure that the unknown intruder was emanating. Since the amount that intruder was emanating was easily stronger than most lieutenants in the Serie. Not bad, brat. You might actually be a challenge. So tell me, what's your name? Sorry, but I don't give my name out to just anyone. But if you want to call me by something, call me Rogue, replied Naruto. Well, aren't we the mysterious one? Commented Zabuza with a slight smirk underneath his mask. Not that it matters, as I'll just carve that name on your tombstone when I'm finished with you. You're welcome to try, answered Naruto with a slight smirk. As soon as Naruto said this, Zabuza disappeared within the blink of an eye and reappeared right behind Naruto, where he attempted to slash the young Shinigami in the back. But before Zabuza's sword could cut Naruto, the hood-wearing boy disappeared and reappeared opposite Zabuza, a few meters from him. He dodged it, thought Zabuza in mild surprise. He's pretty fast. After dodging Zabuza's strike, Naruto then went on the offensive, where he disappeared and reappeared right in front of Zabuza with his Tanto sword raised above his head. Acting quickly, Zabuza raised his Zanpakuto up to block Naruto's attack, where he then pushed Naruto back, who then disappeared again and reappeared behind Zabuza and attempted to stab him in the back with his Tanto. Zabuza, of course, avoided the stab by jumping forward, after glancing Naruto at the corner of his eye. For the next few minutes, Zabuza was put on the defensive by Naruto, who used his superior speed to attack Zabuza from different directions. It was only thanks to the experience he gained from the many years of fighting both as a Shinigami and, when he was alive, that he was able to block Naruto's attacks in time. After blocking another of Naruto's strikes, Zabuza pushed Naruto back and charged forward in an attempt to slash him. But like before, Naruto skillfully avoided or blocked Zabuza's strikes. Not bad, brat. You've got some skill, complimented Zabuza, as he and Naruto continue to trade attacks. You're pretty fast, and your reactions are good, not to mention your attacks are nothing to sneeze at. Thanks, you're not so bad yourself, replied Naruto after he deflected another of Zabuza's strikes, where for several more minutes the two of them continued to trade blows. Eventually, though, the two of them broke apart and jumped several meters away from one another. Tell me something, brat. Who was your sensei? Since you'd be obviously trained by someone skilled, asked Zabuza. Actually, I had 3 senseis, and one of them was my mother, answered Naruto. Oh, and who was your mother? Asked Zabuza with some curiosity. Sorry, but like my name, there's a need to know, and you don't need to know, replied the hooded boy. After hearing Naruto's response, Zabuza frowned slightly, but quickly let it go, since it didn't matter to him much. Fine, keep your secrets, but I suggest you prepare yourself, since we're going to the next level, where the 4th-seated officer cried out, Slice, Shoki, Demon Slayer. Upon which Zabuza's sword changed shape and turned into an oversized knife with a single edge, too. The sword itself reminded Zabuza of his old sword Kubikurabocho, decapitating carving knife, which he wielded back when he was alive in the shinobi world, before he was killed at Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, during his battle with Hitaki Kakashi and his team. That's a pretty big sword you have there, although you do know what they say about guys with big swords, stated Naruto with a smile as he held up his left hand, wiggled his pinky finger. Growling at Naruto's remark, Zabuza rose his Zanpakuto, then swung it in a downward angle, while crying out, Onigiri, Demon Slash. Hey! As soon as Zabuza swung his blade, a massive red wave of spiritual energy erupted from Zabuza's sword and flew towards Naruto at incredible speed. Acting quickly, Naruto used his Shuinpa flash steps to avoid the powerful attack and appeared on one of the walls that framed the street. After avoiding the attack, Naruto observed the damage done by Zabuza's attack, where he let out a low whistle. From where Zabuza stood, there was now a long 12-inch deep cut which ran down the middle of the street, all the way down to the other end, indicating that Zabuza's attack had ran all the way down the street. But what impressed Naruto was that the technique continued on and it cut right through a small storage building, which was at the end of the street, and split it in two. Fifth, so what do you think of that, you smart-mouthed brat? Asked Zabuza as he looked up at Naruto. Not bad. Not bad at all, responded Naruto. I'm guessing by your attack that your Zanpakuto is a melee type, where you condense large amounts of spiritual pressure and channel it to the tip of your sword. This allows you to magnify your slash attacks immensely, causing large-scale damage and destruction to your target and anything else. Naturally, Zabuza was both surprised and impressed with how quickly Naruto was able to understand how his Zabuza's Zanpakuto worked. Well, aren't we the smart one? But still it'll do you no good, replied Zabuza, before he disappeared and reappeared above Naruto and shouted out Onigiri, where he unleashed another powerful slash attack. Naruto, of course, quickly evaded the attack again, using Shuinpa, where the only damage done was to the wall he had been standing on. He then reappeared behind Zabuza and delivered a powerful kick to his back, causing the man to fall to the ground. Luckily, though, Zabuza was able to recover himself before he hit the ground, where he landed on his feet. But as soon as he landed on the ground, Naruto appeared once again in front of the man and attempted to slash at him with his tanto. Zabuza, of course, quickly lifted his giant sword up to defend himself, where he was just able to block Naruto's attack in time. But as soon as he had blocked Naruto's slash, the dark-hooded boy delivered a powerful kick to Zabuza's chest, causing him to skid backward several meters away. The kick, of course, took the wind out of Zabuza for a moment, but it didn't take him long to recover, where as soon as he did, he found himself having to raise his Zanpakuto up again to defend himself, when Naruto appeared in front of him again in an attempt to slash him. Zabuza naturally blocked the slash and pushed Naruto away, where he tried to hit Naruto with his Onigiri. But like before, Naruto avoided the attack. Missed again, no brow. You should try a new thing they call aiming. It actually helps, mocked Naruto. You damn cheeky brat. I cut you in two, cried Zabuza angrily, as he sent another large wave of energy at Naruto. Avoiding Zabuza's attack again, Naruto reappeared up in the air above Zabuza, sloppy, very sloppish. They'll make anyone a seated officer these days. Growling again at Naruto remarks, Zabuza swung his blade several times, creating a dozen or so flying energy blades, which Naruto avoided yet again, using his Shuinpa to yet again avoid Zabuza's attack. Stop moving around, pant, and hold still, you damn pest, cried Zabuza angrily as he started to pant a little, since using his Onigiri so much was starting to wear him down. TSK now, why would I do a silly thing like that? Commented Naruto as he leaned against a ruined building a few meters behind Zabuza. Since if I did that, you never get any better. Argara, cried Zabuza angrily as he spun around and swung his sword again and sent a large wave of energy at Naruto, who disappeared before the attack could hit. Panting heavily, Zabuza looked around for Naruto, and as he did, he suddenly realized Naruto's plan. He was purposely aggravating him, Zabuza, so that he would waste all his energy on trying to hit the young teen. Since the hooded boy knew that Zabuza's attacks took a lot of energy to use, and the more Zabuza used them, weaker he becomes. Nice try, brat. I see what you're up to. You're trying to rile me up so I would wear myself out and make it easier for you to take me out. But it won't work now, since I'm on to your little plan. Well, if that's the case, commented Naruto from unknown place before he reappeared behind Zabuza and kicked him in the back. I guess I'll have to do things the hard way. For the next few minutes, Zabuza was forced on the defensive, where Naruto used his high speed to his advantage, where he kept attacking Zabuza from different directions, leaving him little chance for a counterattack. It also didn't take Zabuza long to figure out that Naruto was also making sure that he couldn't use his Onigiri, since by attacking him from multiple directions, Naruto prevented Zabuza the time he needed to gather his spiritual power for his attack, while at the same time made sure that he did not become a stationary target for Zabuza to aim for. As the fight continued, Zabuza became covered cuts from all of Naruto's attacks, most of which he barely avoided. His Shinigami uniform was in an even worse state, where it was in tatters and top portion of it was on the verge of falling apart. Knowing he needed to finish this fight quickly, Zabuza came up with a plan where after he blocked another of Naruto's attack with a giant sword. The former mist swordsman angled his blade so that his sword would reflect the light of the sun right into the eyes of Naruto, temporarily blinding the young man. Zabuza then kicked the blinded Naruto several meters away and then channeled a massive amount of his spiritual power into his Zanpakuto, where he intended to finish this fight with one last attack. Once he gathered enough power, Zabuza roared out, "Onigiri," and swung his sword down, where a massive wave of red energy erupted from the giant sword. As the massive attack flew towards Naruto, destroying everything that stood in its way, the hooded boy finally regained his sight and didn't look the least bit worried when he saw the attack coming at him. In fact, he stood his ground and didn't even try to avoid the attack. Just when the attack was about to hit him, Naruto simply said Bakudo 81. Danku, way of binding number 81, severing void. As soon as Naruto said this, a large translucent rectangular wall appeared in front of Naruto and blocked Zabuza's attack. Zabuza himself was blasted a bit away when his attack hit the translucent wall, but remarkably the wall stood strong, while everything else in front of it was destroyed by the blast. From the rooftop above, Haku watched in disbelief as Naruto created the translucent wall and blocked Zabuza's attack. Impossible! That's a level 81 Kido spell, thought a shocked Haku, as he remembered seeing his division captain Unohana using that spell once before to block a hollow attack. How could he skip the incantation for Danku and still stop Zabuza-sama's attack? Not even lieutenants are skilled enough to do that. Only captain class or Kido masters. Shit, the brat knows Kido as well, thought Zabuza, as he slowly picked himself up after being blasted away by his own attack, where he received several large burns on his body. But just as he got back on his feet, another Naruto appeared behind him and cried out Bakudo 63. Seijo Sabaku, way of binding number 63, locking bondage stripes. After which the other Naruto generated yellow energy in the form of very thick rope from his right hand and sent it toward the Zabuza. The energy rope then entangled itself around the Zabuza's arms and body, completely immobilizing him. Once Zabuza was bound up by the energy rope, the originally Naruto then deactivated his Danku spell, where he used his Shuinpa to appear directly in front of Zabuza, with only a few meters separating the two of them. Zabuza, of course, tried to struggle out of the energy robe, but found that it was too strong for him to break. When the real Naruto appeared in front of him, he was of course surprised, since he had thought that the Naruto that had him bound up was the real Naruto. But when he saw the two of them, he realized the other Naruto was clone. Could he actually be from our world? If so, how can he use ninjutsu? Thought Zabuza, since after dying and arriving in the Soul Society, both Haku and Zabuza learned that they were unable to use any of their ninjutsu. I'm afraid this is where it ends. Zabuza, coming to Naruto, where he then held up the palm of his hand, said Hado 33. Sokatsui, way of destruction number 33. Blue fire crashed down, after which a large blast of blue energy erupted from Naruto's palm and flew towards Zabuza. But before the attack could hit, Naruto suddenly heard someone cry Hado 31. Shikaho, way of destruction number 31. Red fire cannon. After which, two crimson spheres of energies appeared from above, where it destroyed the Naruto clone, while the second intercepted Naruto's Sokatsui blast and caused a large explosion. This forced both Naruto and Zabuza, who was freed from binds when the Naruto clone was destroyed, to jump away. Soon after, the smoke from the blast started to dissipate, and Naruto saw Haku standing next to Zabuza in the now ruined streetway. Using a level 31 Kido without incantations, not too shabby for a fifth seat, thought the blonde hooded boy. Well, it's about time you joined the fun. I was beginning to think you were going to sit back and watch the whole thing, commented Naruto from the rooftop he was standing on, looking down at Haku and Zabuza. Haku, what the hell are you doing here? I told you I handle this myself, said Zabuza angrily. Forgive me, Zabuza-sama, but I could no longer sit back and watch, as this person is no ordinary individually, replied Haku. At this, Zabuza only scoffed and muttered, I could still have taken him, though secretly he did agree with Haku, since he knew that his opponent was much stronger than he appeared, and given how Naruto had tricked him earlier to use a lot of his energy, he was not in great shape. Hence, to beat him, Zabuza knew he needed Haku's help. He only hoped that his captain and his division wouldn't hear about this, since members of Squad 11 fought their battles alone. It doesn't matter to me whether I fight one of you or the two of you, since it's going to end the same either way, commented Naruto. Well, aren't we the arrogant one, commented Zabuza as he stared at Naruto, as he was eager to finish their fight. I prefer the term confident. No, brow, replied the hooded boy. If I may, before we engage in battle, there are several questions I would like to ask you, Rogue-san, spoke Haku. What would depend on the questions? Answered Naruto. How is it that you're able to do Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, shadow clone technique? Asked the former Hayaton user. Oh, so you know the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, which means you're from the shinobi world as well. Yes, both Zabuza-sama and I are from the same world, which you're clearly from. Now can you tell us how you're able to do ninjutsu? Asked Haku. Well, like you said, I'm from the shinobi world, but unlike either of you, I did not die, since I'm still alive, answered Naruto. Then how is it that you've the powers of a Shinigami? Asked Zabuza, since he didn't think it was possible for a living person to have the power of a Shinigami. Well, as you may or may not know, several hundred years ago, or more, back when shinobi were on the rise, the Soul Society, in its infinite wisdom, began to experiment on people with the ability to use chakra, in the hope of finding a way to reproduce chakra. So to use it in their war against hollows, naturally their experiments failed, and an unexpected side effect appeared in many of those who were experimented on. This side effect resulted in the creation of what is commonly known in the shinobi world as bloodlines, explained Naruto. Naturally, after hearing this, both Zabuza and Haku were shocked beyond belief. Haku was especially stunned by the news, since if this was true, then his bloodline was the result of experiments done of his ancestors by the Soul Society. Before either Zabuza or Haku could comment of this new revelation, Naruto continued with his story. Now, after seeing the results of what their experiments were doing to the people of our world, the Soul Society ordered a halt to the experiments and ordered the shinobi world to be sealed off. Unfortunately, not everyone agreed with the top brass's decision, where the head scientist of the team that experimented on the people in our world went rogue and continued his experiments. But unlike last time, he went for a different approach. This time, he attempted to give a shinobi the powers of Shinigami, thereby creating a shinobi-Shinigami hybrid. A shinobi-Shinigami hybrid, repeated Zabuza in disbelief. I didn't think such a thing was possible. So that means you are the result of that scientist experiment, stated Haku. Give or take a couple of dozen generations. If that's the case, then this should get very interesting, commented Zabuza as he readied himself. At this, Haku just nodded, where he then drew his Zanpakuto out and said, Dance, Hayuchu, icicle, after which his Zanpakuto began to glow, and two pearl, white curved katanas appeared in his hand. 3. We whistled a clearly impressed Naruto. Now that's interesting, you're a dual blade type user. Naruto, of course, knew dual blade type Zanpakutos were extremely rare, which said a lot about the uniqueness of a person who had one. According to Naruto's information about the Siriidii, there were only 3 Shinigami with dual blade type Zanpakutos. But after seeing Haku, it was obvious that his information was either incorrect or simply out of date. Before we get started, can you tell me when you both became Shinigami? Asked Naruto, since he was curious how he had never heard about these two. We joined the Siriidii about 1.5 years ago, although we arrived in the Soul Society a year before that, where we trained ourselves to awaken our Zanpakuto powers, answered Haku. This, of course, both surprised and impressed Naruto, since to rise up 4th and 5th seat In little over 2.5 years was no small feat. It also explained why he never heard of them, since by the earliest his information on the Soul Society was about 3 years old. Well, it seems I've clearly been underestimating you both. A mistake I won't make again, replied Naruto, as he readied himself. After which both Haku and Zabuza used Shuinpa and disappeared right before Naruto's eyes. Zabuza, of course, quickly appeared right above Naruto's head and attempted a powerful downward slash on Naruto, who easily avoided the slash, using his own Shuinpa, where Zabuza's sword just cut through the wall Naruto has been just standing on. Too slow, no brow, said Naruto, as he reappeared in mid-air away from Zabuza. But as soon as he said this, a fountain of blood burst out of Naruto's chest, along with a white blade. When Naruto looked back, he saw Haku standing behind him, with a sorrowful look on his face. Please forgive me for the pain I've caused you. But as soon as Haku said this, Naruto faded away, where the next thing Haku knew, he heard Naruto's voice from behind him. Not bad, but still, there's not a chance in a million years that I would fall for a Shuinpa that's sluggish and that predictable, said Naruto before he delivered a powerful kick in Haku's back, sending him flying to the ground. Luckily, though, Haku recovered from the kick right before he hit the ground and landed on his feet, where he then disappeared and reappeared right next to Zabuza. Once Haku reappeared next to him, Zabuza stared up at Naruto with a slight frown. Even though he and Haku weren't master in Shuinpa, neither of them were amateurs in using it. Haku himself was skilled enough that he could keep up with the lieutenant, hence it made the former Miss Swordsman wonder how fast their opponent really was. Since he remembered seeing a member of the Suriidi's stealth unit using a technique like that, which was similar to a Kongi no Jutsu body replacement technique, used in the shinobi world. At the same time, Naruto stared back at Haku and Zabuza, where he decided to up the ante a bit, where then placed his Tanto in his mouth, and then formed a hand seal for one of his favorite jutsus, the Kagabunshin no Jutsu. Naruto had learned the technique with the help of his mother, who had borrowed a scroll with details on how it was done. After making a clone of himself, Naruto and his clone disappeared and reappeared right in front of Haku and Zabuza, where he engaged Haku and his clone attacked Zabuza. For the next few minutes, Naruto and Haku fought each other in a fierce battle with their swords, where Naruto found Haku to be quite skilled with his dual Zappakudo. No doubt thanks to his training as a Shinigami and as a shinobi back when he was alive. Soon after, the two of them broke apart from one another and ended up facing each other again on a large flat rooftop. Haku then raised her right-hand katana and swung it in a horizontal slash, while crying out Hyokawa, Ice Edge, B. After which a crescent-shaped wave of ice erupted from Haku's katana, where several dozen ice spikes sprung from it, nearly impaling the hooded boy. Fortunately, though, for Naruto, he was able to avoid the deadly ice attack by jumping up into the air and then falling down towards Haku from above. The former Kirinin, of course, acted quickly, where he raised his left-hand katana up and blocked Naruto's sword slash. After which the two of them re-engaged each other in a fierce sword battle. As the battle continued, Naruto began to force Haku back, despite the fifth seat having more swords than him. Realizing what was happening, Haku decided to gain some distance from his opponent, where he jumped to the rooftop and into the air, and before Naruto could follow after him. Haku raised both his katana together in an X-like shape and started gathering the surrounding water vapor around him. As he did, hundreds of small snowflake-like objects started to appear around Haku. After which Haku then broke his two katana away from one another and cried out, Hayaseka, frozen snowflakes. See? Knowing he couldn't avoid all of Haku's snowflake projectiles, Naruto once again used Danku to block the deadly attack. But as soon as he did this, Naruto sensed his shadow clone being destroyed by Zabuza. But just as the young Shinigami was about to turn around and look for Zabuza, the former demon of the hidden mist appeared behind Naruto and separated the hooded boy from his lower half with his massive sword. You're finished, stated Zabuza with a smirk behind his mask, which quickly disappeared when he saw Naruto fade away, revealing that the young boy had once again used a sashimi to avoid being cut in two. As soon as Zabuza realized this, he started to look for Naruto, but before he could find the hooded boy, Naruto suddenly heard Haku yell out to him, "Zabuza-sama, above you." When Zabuza looked up, he saw Naruto falling down from above him with his free left hand stretched forward, which was generating yellow like orb of lightning. Hado 63. Raikoho, Way of Destruction number 63. Thunder, roar seer, roared Naruto, after which a massive blast of energy erupted from Naruto's hand, completely destroying the building below. After the blast, a massive cloud of smoke appeared around the blast radius. As the smoke continued to rise, Zabuza appeared out of the smoke, with his uniform in even worse shape than before. He also has several scorch marks on his arms and torso, no doubt caused by the blast. "Are you alright, Zabuza?" asked the concerned Haku, after the former ice users appeared next to the taller man, where he landed on one of the streets near the now destroyed building. "Yeah, I'm fine, but that was a close one," muttered the man. "You got that right, no brow. If you had been any slower, your partner here and his division would be scrapping your remains off this entire area," spoke Naruto from behind the two former shinobi. Upon hearing Naruto's voice, both shinigami quickly spun around in surprise with the swords forward, since neither of them had sensed Naruto until he spoke. When they turned around, they saw Naruto sitting up on the wall directly behind him, with an amused smirk. "How the fuck did he sneak up behind us without alerting us?" thought Zabuza with confusion. "His stealth skill are clearly high," thought Haku with equal surprise. "Well now, do you want to call it quits, or are you hungry for some more?" asked the hood-wearing boy with a cheeky grin. "Damn brat, I going enjoy cutting him into pieces," thought Zabuza. "Zabuza-sama, if we are to defeat him, we must work together," spoke Haku, where the former Miss Swordsman just nodded in agreement, knowing that Haku was right. After Zabuza nodded in agreement, Haku then brought both his katana forward and began to gather the water vapor from the air around him, after which he then said, "Gyoko Kasumi," chilling mist. As soon Haku said this, a thick mist started to form around them and cover the entire area. Before Naruto could even wonder what was going on, both Haku and Zabuza disappeared into the mist. Are they trying to use the mist to make an escape? Naruto thought, as he jumped onto a building rooftop before he suddenly heard Zabuza's laughter from mist. "What's wrong, brat? Are you starting to get scared?" "Well, you should be," said Zabuza from right behind Naruto, who barely evaded a large slash from the large that would have cut him in two. After dodging Zabuza's attack, Naruto prepared to strike back, but before he could, Zabuza disappeared in the mist. As Naruto looked around for Zabuza, the former Kiri shinobi once again appeared next to Naruto and swung his sword at him again. Luckily, thanks to many years of intense training with his adopted mother, Naruto was able to evade another lethal slash from Zabuza's blade. Sadly, he was unable to avoid it as well as he did before, where Zabuza cut Naruto's left sleeve and gave the hooded boy a large cut. "Pretty good, but you won't be able to avoid my attacks forever," spoke Zabuza as he disappeared in the mist once again. "Damn it, now I get it. They're not using this mist to cover their retreat. They're using it to hide, so Zabuza can sneak up on me whenever he wants. I can't even sense their spiritual pressure or power since they're suppressing it," thought Naruto. Since from his visits to the shinobi world with his adopted mother, he had heard of a shinobi village called Kirigakure no Sato, village hidden in the mist, who had shinobi trained in the art of killing people silently and track them through sound alone. He guessed this was how Zabuza was able to find him and come so close to him without him knowing. 8 points. Naruto heard the larynx, spine, lungs, liver, jugular vein, collarbone, kidney, and heart. So many choices, I just can't decide which to choose. "You can use all the scare tactica you want, Zabuza, but I'll tell you now, they aren't going to work on me," said Naruto. "Pity, fear can often be a good thing," answered Zabuza from the mist, before he appeared in Naruto's right side. Fortunately, Naruto was able to glimpse Zabuza appearing on his right, where he spun around and blocked Zabuza's giant sword with his tanto. But only just barely, as he struggled to hold Zabuza back. But eventually, thanks to all the physical training he had gone through with his adopted mother, Naruto was eventually able to push Zabuza back. After being pushed back, Zabuza once again disappeared into the mist before Naruto could strike back. Damn it, what's happening to me? Thought Naruto, as he was barely able to block Zabuza's slash in time, where his reaction time was becoming sluggish and his body was becoming numb. When he looked down at his right hand, his sword hand, she saw ice slowly forming on his hand. Shit, it's this mist. Not only does it hide both Zabuza and Haku from me, but is also slowly freezing me, Naruto thought angrily. Knowing that the longer he stayed in this mist, the worse his situation would get, Naruto decided it was time to go to the next level. After sheathing his tanto blade and freeing his hand from the ice, Naruto then went behind his lower back and took out his Zanpakuto, where he then spun in his hand for a moment before gripping it tightly. To be honest, Zabuza, I never expected that I'd need to go this far, but it seems that you've both forced my hand. Now you and your partner Haku are going to have a taste of what I'm really capable of, said Naruto. After which his eyes began to glow electric blue, along with one of the gems on his sword handle, where he then yelled out, "Let the heavens tremble and fall before your might. Reo, Thunder King." After which, a massive amount of spiritual pressure and power erupted from Naruto. The force was so great that it actually blew away Haku's Gyoko Kasumi, chilling mist. As soon as the mist was blown away, Naruto could finally see both Haku and Zabuza, who were opposite him, 2 buildings away. Both Shinigami were of course trying to shield their faces with their arms from the massive shockwave that was erupting from the spiritual pressure and power coming from Naruto. At the same time, both of them noticed that the sky above was starting to get dark, as storm clouds began to suddenly appear and cover the sky. This is nuts. How can a brat like him have this much power? Cried Zabuza angrily, as the power he was feeling right now was clearly at the level of captain, which made the man wonder just who the hell Naruto was. Zabuza-sama, I think it would be wise to withdraw, said Haku, as he too began to worry. On the other side of the Siriidei, currently traveling through the Siriidei in her cat form, the former captain of Squad 2 Shihoin Yuruchi searched for her son and the rest of their companions. She eventually came to a halt when she noticed large dark storm clouds emanating from the far west of the Siriidei, along with a large spiritual power and the distant sound of thunder rumbling. Yuruchi, of course, did not have to guess who was causing this, since she recognized the spiritual signature and the signs of Naruto activating one of his Zanpakuto spirits, Reo. Upon seeing this, Yuruchi became concerned at Naruto activating his Zanpakuto, since she knew for her adopted son to awaken his Zanpakuto, he was either in trouble or wanted to finish a fight quickly. As she raced in the direction where she sensed Naruto's power, she could only hope that it was the lesser of the two, since she was unsure if Naruto could win if he went against one of the 13 captains, especially some of the more senior ones like Kairaku and Yukitake, or worse, Aizen, or one of his followers. Please be all right, Naruto, thought the woman. With Naruto, soon enough after releasing his Zanpakuto, Naruto's spiritual power and pressure started to recede, although still remained strong, where both Haku and Zanpakuto were having some trouble breathing. Even though his spiritual output has reduced, his spiritual pressure is still intense, thought Zabuza, as he kept his guard up and stared at Naruto, who was emanating a blue aura-like power and was holding a completely different sword from before. Naruto's new sword was a long katana with a circular-like guard with small lightning bolt shape points surrounding it. The sword itself is about 1.8 meters long, 6 foot long, making it taller than Naruto himself, and was emanating small bolts of lightning. So that is the released form of his Zanpakuto, thought Haku as he eyed the sword wearily. At the same time, Naruto looked down at his Zanpakuto and smiled, as seeing Ryo in its release form reminded him of when he first learned Ryo's name and awakened its power. Flashbacks several years ago. For the past 2 hours, an 8-year-old Naruto had been running around the underground training area, avoiding blow after blow from the former captain of Squad 12 Urahara Kisuke, who was wielding his own Zanpakuto, Benaheim, Crimson Princess, in its release form. Panting slightly, Naruto glared angrily at his surrogate uncle, who had the same annoyed smile on his face. Now Naruto-kun, don't be like that. Glaring at me won't help you learn you Zanpakuto's names, said Kisuke with an amused tone. The goal of this training was, of course, to knock his Uncle Bucket like hat off. But sadly, this proved to be more difficult than Naruto originally thought, where all his attempts met with utter failure. Eventually, Naruto was put completely on the defensive, where the best he could do was to run around and avoid Kisuke's attacks. Damn it, how am I supposed to knock that stupid hat of his off when I can't even get close to him? Naruto asked angrily inside his head. This is pathetic. Am I really this weak and helpless? About time you realized it, spoke a familiar male voice from inside Naruto's head. Inside Naruto's mind. After hearing the familiar male voice from inside Naruto's head, the young blonde suddenly found himself standing atop a massive mountain, surrounded by dozens of smaller other mountains on all sides, as far as he could see. When he looked up, he could see the vast blue sky, which had a few white clouds in it. Where am I? Asked Naruto as looked around the small flat area of the mountaintop. You're in my world, said the familiar male voice from behind Naruto, who quickly spun around and found the same one-eyed samurai he met earlier. It's you, Hitatsu team, bastard Cyclops, declared Naruto as he pointed at the samurai-like man, who frowned angrily. That isn't my name, you little runt, although you know that if you actually opened your ears and listened to me. Hey, don't call me runt, team, yelled Naruto angrily. Make me shrimp boy, rounded the Zanpakuto spirit. For the next few minutes, Naruto attempted to punch and kick at the one-eyed samurai, but each time he would easily evade the young boy's attacks and either trip him up or push him away. Eventually, the Zanpakuto spirit decided to end this, as he knew that Naruto could never touch him. At least, not until he learned his name and could use his power. Well, I give you this, brat. You got plenty of spunk and determination, which luckily for you is something I like, said the one-eyed samurai as he looked down at the panting blonde. But still, guts and determination will only get you so far when you don't have the power to back it up, and unless you learn my name, you'll never have the power you need. After hearing this, Naruto remained silent as he digested what his Zanpakuto spirit was telling him. So what is this place? This isn't the same place where I met you and the others, asked the blonde boy. The place where we met before was the world where the others and I can meet you together. This place, though, is my own personal world, explained the samurai-like spirit. So does that mean the others have their own worlds as well? Asked Naruto, where the blue-wearing samurai just nodded. What do I have to do to use your power? Stop running away like some headless chicken and face that bucket hat wearing idiot like a real man, answered the samurai. If you do that, you'll finally be able to hear my name, since the only thing that's preventing you from hearing it is your own cowardice. But once you've man up and face him, call out my name and you'll wipe the smirk off that idiot. Real world. After returning to the real world, Naruto found himself once again facing Kisuke, where like before, Naruto was forced to jump away to avoid a powerful slash from the hat-wearing man. But unlike the last time, Naruto did not try to run away. Instead, he continued to face Kisuke and point his sword handle forward. Oh, aren't you going to run away, Naruto-kun? Asked Kisuke as he stared at the young blonde. No, I'm done running from you, Uncle Kisuke. As one way or the other, I'm going to knock that hat off you, stated Naruto. Well, you're welcome to try, Naruto-kun, replied the hat-wearing man, before he charged straight at Naruto. Don't back down, brat. Stand your ground and call me out. Let the heavens tremble and fall before your might. Ryo, roared Naruto, after which one of the gems of his sword hilt glowed blue and a massive burst of spiritual power erupted from Naruto and forced Kisuke back. After landing a couple of feet away from Naruto, Kisuke watched as the massive spiritual power died down and the smoke rose up. Eventually, the smoke began to dissipate, and a medium-sized silhouette appeared in the smoke. Once it fully dissipated, Kisuke could see Naruto holding his long Zanpakuto, which was over half his size and made the blonde man wonder now Naruto was able to hold it up. Well now, Naruto-kun, it's about time you released one of you Zanpakutos. But tell me, are you sure you can handle a sword like that? Let alone use it to knock my hat off, Kisuke asked. Oh, I'm more than sure I can handle this, Uncle Kisuke, as you're about to find out, replied the young boy, before he raised his long sword over his head and swung it down, while crying out, Raiken, lightning blade. Eh. After swinging his sword down, a massive crescent-shaped blade of lightning erupted from his katana and flew straight at Kisuke, who was caught slightly off guard by the sudden attack. Acting quickly, Kisuke quickly swung his Zanpakuto and cried, Chikasumi no Tate, blood mist shield, creating a hexagonal-shaped crimson barrier in front of him, blocking Naruto's attack and protecting him from harm. But even still, the barrier did take some damage, where the left side of it was blasted off and there were several large cracks, which spread across the rest of it. Although the most shocking thing about the technique was a massive slash marks on the ground to Kisuke's sides. That was caused by Naruto's attack, when it was split in two after being blocked by Kisuke's Chikasumi no Tate, but was still strong enough to cut a nearby boulder in two, which was to Kisuke's right. Not only that, but despite his Chikasumi no Tate taking brute of the attack, Kisuke's hat was still blown off and cut in two by the shockwave of the attack. My, that was rather close. If I didn't have my barrier and put it up in time, that could have killed me, Kisuke commented with some amusement. Although it seems you succeed in killing my hat. It was then at this point that Kisuke noticed that Naruto was on the ground unconscious, most likely from exhaustion after using so much spiritual power, while his Zanpakuto returned to its sealed state. Seeing this, Kisuke smiled and went over to pick the young boy up, along with his Zanpakuto. As he carried the young boy back up to the stairs, Kisuke smiled down at the sleeping boy. Well done, Naruto-kun, you've completed the first phase of Part 3. Now get as much rest as you can, for you still have to learn the names of your two other spirits, after which you'll have to learn and master each of their powers, before you'll have full control of your Zanpakuto. In flashback, after releasing the Shurikai form of Ryo, Naruto smirked at the two former Shinigami, who were still unnerved by the power Naruto was emanating and the storm he created when he released Ryo. Bleach Ost 120 Storm Center. So, who wants to go first? Asked the hooded boy as he held up his long katana. At this, both Haku and Zabuza charged together, but just as they reappeared and swung their swords, Naruto disappeared within the blink of an eye. He then reappeared above the two and swung his sword downward. Acting quickly, both Shinigami looked up and saw Naruto falling down towards them, where they jumped away in opposite directions to avoid Naruto's attack. But even after avoiding the attack, the slash was so powerful that the shockwave blew both former shinobi away. Fuck, how the hell can a simple slash like that be so power? Thought Zabuza as he skidded across the ground. But as soon as the former demon of the hidden mist regained his footing, Naruto reappeared in front of his and tried to cut the man in two with his long sword. Luckily, though, Zabuza was able to raise his sword up in time to block the slash, but only just barely, and continued to struggle to hold Naruto back, as the boy was much stronger than he appeared. Eventually, Zabuza was able to jump away from Naruto, where he then swung his sword and used his Onigiri in an attempt to cut Naruto in half. Seeing this, Naruto then swung his own sword and cried, Raiken, creating a blue crescent blade of energy. Within seconds, the two attacks clashed, caused a massive explosion that destroyed the street and most of the surrounding buildings, leaving a large crater. The blasted was also powerful enough that it blasted both Zabuza and Naruto away, where Zabuza slammed his back through a wall. Shit, that attack was just as powerful as my Onigiri, said Zabuza as he slowly picked himself. At the opposite end of the area, Naruto appeared on the rooftop of another building, as unlike Zabuza, he had been able to maintain control over himself and avoided being sent through any buildings or walls. Once he appeared on the rooftop, Naruto started to look around for any sign of Haku. He of course quickly found the dual sword user, where Haku appeared above Naruto and attempted to slash at the hooded boy with his dual Zanpakuto. Sensing danger, Naruto immediately rolled forward and out of the way, avoiding being cut into pieces by Haku. After which he then spun around, swung his sword again to create another Raiken, which nearly cut Haku in half, who only avoided the slashing attack by using Shuinpa, although was unable to avoid it completely, where he received a large slash on his right side. But before Naruto could take advantage of the injury that his attack inflicted on Haku, Zabuza appeared on left Naruto's, where he once again attempted to cut Naruto in two. But as soon as he swung his Zanpakuto, his sword was stopped by some kind of lightning shield which surrounded Naruto. After which the lightning then traveled down Shoki and into Zabuza's body, causing intense pain to his body and forced him to pull away from Naruto. "Erug, what the hell was that?" cried Zabuza as he struggled to stay on his feet and hold onto his giant sword. "It's called Denkeiho, Lightning Discharge, F. And, as you can guess, it's created by discharging the lightning created by my sword throughout my entire body, giving me an instant defense, which can block most attacks, including physical one," explained Naruto. "You could say it's my ultimate defense, since as you just found out, not only does it block attacks, but it can also cause severe damage to anyone who makes direct contact with it." After hearing this, Zabuza growled angrily, since this made it even more difficult to fight Naruto. Soon enough, though, Haku rejoined Zabuza after he treated his injury, where together the two once again attacked the hooded teen. For the next few minutes, Naruto fought the two seated officers in a fierce sword fight, where they forced the rogue Shinigami to be on the defense. As the two Shinigami proved to be an excellent fighting team, thanks to working for many years together when they were alive in the shinobi world. Eventually, though, Naruto was able to get away from the two by using Utsusimi, where he then reappeared high up in the air above the two Shinigami, with his Zanpakuto raised up above his head, pointing into the cloud-covered sky. Within seconds, a bolt of lightning struck the Zanpakuto, where the sword became covered in lightning, after which Naruto swung his sword down and roared out Keiko Ikazuchi, descending thunder, G, and sent a massive blast of lightning down on towards Zabuza and Haku. When the two former Kiri shinobi saw the massive blast of energy heading down towards them, they quickly tried to move out of the way of the blast and avoid being killed. Unfortunately, though, the blast was much too powerful to escape fully, where they were both sent flying away by the blast. When the blast ended, the area that Naruto was fighting Zabuza and Haku was now one giant crater, surrounded by ruined buildings, which were damaged by the shockwave of the blast. In Bleach OSD 1 number 20 Storm Center, lying atop of the ruins of one of those buildings was Zabuza, who was covered in even more burns and bruises caused by Naruto's attack. "Oh, what kind of fucked attack was that?" thought Zabuza groggily as he opened his eyes and slowly tried to get back on his feet. But as soon as he did, he suddenly saw something heading towards him and lifted his Zanpakuto up in an attempt to block it. But instead of blocking it, the thing went right through his large sword and pierced his left shoulder blade, pinning him to the wall behind him, which was the only thing left belonging to the destroyed building. When Zabuza looked at what had pierced him, he saw that it was a long, thin blade with lightning surrounding. After being stabbed, Zabuza, of course, tried to move, but quickly found he could not when he felt the lightning from the blade surge through his body, causing it to go numb and stiff. When Zabuza looked up, he then saw Naruto appear in front of him, holding the long sword in his right hand. "I wouldn't try to move if I were you, no, brow, since, as you can guess, the lightning from my Zanpakuto causes the muscles in your body to go numb, explained Naruto, making it impossible for you to move. Not to mention, if I wanted, I can move my sword and cut you into pieces. Zabuza, of course, growled at this, since he knew he was at Naruto's mercy and couldn't do anything. Luckily, though, for Zabuza, Naruto pulled his blade back to its normal length and let the man fall to the ground face first. Lucky for you, no, brow. I try to avoid killing people that aren't hollows, spoke Naruto, and even though you and your partner attacked me, I'm glad we met. Since you're the first Shinigami I've met who are from the shinobi world like me. Not to mention, I enjoyed our little fight. After defeating Zabuza, Naruto jumped away, wanting to gain as much distance from the battlefield and him as possible, knowing that a fight like this would have gained a lot of attention from people, and it would be only a matter of time before more Shinigami arrived. But before Naruto could get too far, he suddenly sensed danger coming behind. Acting on his instincts, Naruto jumped away, barely avoiding a hail of large ice shaped like snowflakes. When Naruto turned around, he saw a fairly injured Haku standing on a nearby building, just outside the crater that Naruto's Keiko Ikazuchi caused. The young man in question had many burns and other injuries on his arms and legs, and his uniform was fairly torn up and was barely holding together. "What have you done to Zabuza-sama?" demanded the angry Haku, as he could not sense Zabuza's spiritual energy. "If you're thinking that I killed your boyfriend, then you're wrong. He's alive," stated Naruto. "I don't kill people who aren't hollows unless I have to. He's just knocked out and won't be in any shape to fight anytime soon." After hearing this, Haku let out a sigh of relief, as he was relieved that Zabuza was still alive. But even after hearing this, Haku fell into a fighting stance and prepared to restart their battle. Seeing this, Naruto just raised his eyebrow, which Haku couldn't see since the top portion of Naruto's face is covered by his hood. "Do you really want to do this? As given the shape you're in right now, you won't last very long against me. Not to mention, I don't really like fighting injured people. I'm an officer of the Suriidii, and added to what you did to Zabuza-sama, I cannot simply let you escape," Haku answered. After hearing this, Naruto sighed and slung his sword onto his shoulder. "Oh, well, I give you props on being loyal to your partner and sticking to your principles, but that's all. I suggest that you prepare yourself, Rogue-san," replied Haku, before he disappeared and reappeared behind Naruto, who spun around and blocked both Haku's twin katana with his sword and pushed him away. Haku then quickly jumped up into the air and used his Zanpakuto to create another wave of ice-shaped snowflakes and fired them at Naruto. Seeing this, Naruto then used his Den-Keiho technique to shield himself from the wave of ice-shaped snowflakes, after which he then brought up his sword and pointed it at Haku and cried, "Reizo, lightning spear." Where his blade then extended forward at high speed and pierced Haku's chest. But just when Naruto thought he had won the fight, Haku turned white and then shattered into ice, revealing him to be a fake. Seeing this, Naruto then started to look around for where the real Haku went and quickly located him several meters behind him. "Nice little trick there. My guess is you developed that trick from your knowledge as a shinobi back when you were still alive." "Correct. I call it Korikorimi, ice replacement," Haku replied before he stabbed both his katana into the ground and cried, "Baika, Arctic Night," after which the ground Haku began to freeze and expand outward. "This can't be good," thought Naruto as the ice field began to expand further outward, freezing the buildings and anything that it touches. Seeing what Haku's technique was doing, Naruto quickly jumped up into the air to avoid being frozen, after which Naruto then swung his sword to create a powerful crescent-shaped blade of lightning from his sword, which flew towards Haku at great speed. Acting quickly, Haku used Shuinpa to avoid the massive flying blade of lightning and appeared in front of Naruto, where they once again clashed swords with one another. For several minutes, Haku and Naruto fought each other in mid-air with their swords, each trying to get an opening to exploit. Eventually, Naruto found an opening and delivered a sharp kick to Haku's side, followed by a sharp elbow to Haku's back, which sent the young Shinigami crashing to the ground. After hit the ground, Haku struggled to get back onto his feet, as thanks to the injuries he suffered from fighting Naruto, along with his now draining spiritual power, Haku realized that he had just about reached his limit. At the same time, Naruto landed right in front of Haku, with only a few feet separating them. "I think we've reached the end of our battle, Haku-san. Your spiritual power has reached its limit, and you're in no condition to keep fighting," said Naruto as he stared at his opponent, who was panting heavily and struggling to keep standing. "I would not be so sure, pant of that rogue-san," replied Haku, where his Shuinpa up into the air, and he lifted both his swords into the air above his head to form an X-like shape, and then began to draw on all his remaining spiritual power for one final attack. As Haku was gathering his spiritual power, Naruto could feel the air beginning to grow colder and snow began to fall from the sky. "What the hell is he up to now?" thought Naruto as he looked up at Haku. After gather all the spiritual energy that he could, Haku then swung his twin sword down and cried, "Hakaha White Wave." Okay. After which a gigantic wave of snow and ice appeared out from behind the buildings in front of Naruto and fall towards the hooded blonde. "This is the end for you, Rogue-san," declared Haku. "I wouldn't be so sure of that, Haku," cried Naruto as he gathered a massive amount of spiritual energy into his Zanpakuto and then rose the long katana up into the air before swinging it in a downward slash while shouting out Raiken. After which a massive crescent-shaped blade of lightning erupted from his katana and flew through Haku's avalanche, splitting it in two and causing it to fall apart. "Impossible!" cried Haku in shock at seeing his strongest attack being cut in two. Before he could recover from his shock, Naruto appeared behind Haku, using his Shuinpa and delivered a powerful strike in the back of the young man's head, with the back of his Naruto's sword, knocking him out, causing him to fall to the ground. With Haku and Zabuza now dealt with, Naruto then deactivated his Zanpakuto, where it glowed white and returned to its sealed form. Upon which Naruto then put away his now sealed Zanpakuto and disappeared in a blur. Soon after, a large number of Shinigami arrived at the scene to assist the injured and unconscious Haku and Zabuza in search for the individual responsible. 4th Division Hospital. Currently standing over the injured Zabuza and Ikaku, who was defeated by Ichigo, the captain of Squad 12 Mayuri Kuratsuchi was demanding answers to his questions on the Ryoka that defeated them. Both men, of course, refused to answer the captain's questions, even when he threatened them, which angered the man. But before Mayuri could punish either Zabuza or Ikaku, the captain of Squad 11 Kenpachi Zaraki arrived and stopped him. "Well, this is interesting. Since when have you become important enough to punish members of other divisions, Mayuri?" spoke the large man. "Zaraki," growled the captain of Squad 12, before he relented and left the room, stating that neither Ikaku nor Zabuza were worth his time. Once Mayuri left the room, both Zabuza and Ikaku tuned to their captain. Kenpachi was, of course, the only captain in the Suriidei, who Zabuza both respected and feared as a commander, which said a lot about the man, since there were very few people who Zabuza either feared or respected, both when he was alive in the shinobi world and when died and became a Shinigami. Zabuza met Kenpachi when he first entered the Suriidei to become a Shinigami, where he challenged the man for his position as captain of the 11th Division. Needless to say, Zabuza lost and only survived his match with Kenpachi by sheer luck. Once he recovered, Zabuza requested to join Squad 11, stating that he wanted to serve under Kenpachi until he was strong enough to kill Kenpachi and take his place as captain. When Zaraki heard this, he was amused by Zabuza's decree and liked both his attitude and determination, where he made Zabuza his 4th seat. "Well, you two certainly got your assess handed to you," commented Zabuza as he stared at his two subordinates. "So why are you here? I find it unlikely that you would simply come here and visit us," commented Zabuza. "Oh, we didn't plan to come here," replied the Lieutenant Squad 11, Kusajishi Yuchu, who appeared from Kenpachi's left shoulder, the adopted daughter of Kenpachi. We only arrived here because Kin-chan got us lost again. Oh, just great. That brat's here too, thought the annoyed Zabuza when he saw Yuchu, since he was never too fond of the pink-haired girl and found her to be an irritation at best. He was also frustrated at the fact that he had to answer to a pipsqueak like her, although knew well enough not to challenge her. Not only because she was the adopted daughter of his captain, but also because Zabuza knew that the girl was more powerful than she appeared. "So how are you feeling, cue ball?" Zabi asked Ichiru, calling them by the nickname she gave them. "Stop calling us that," growled both men angrily. "Oh, so what should I call you too? QQ Ball and Zabi Wabi, or QQQ Ball, Zabi Wabiwa?" Ichiru asked, infuriating both men even further. Thankfully, though, before things could get out of hand, Kenpachi spoke up. "So tell me, is it true? Were two of you defeated by two of these Ryokas?" At this, both men nodded, where Kenpachi then asked them if they were strong, where both Zabuza and Ikika nodded again, stating that both their opponents were very strong. For the next few minutes, Ikiku went on to tell Kenpachi about his battle with his opponent named Ichigo and gave him a description of Ichigo. After hearing everything about Ichigo, Kenpachi grew excited at meeting the orange-haired boy, where he then turned to Zabuza. "And what can you tell me about the one who defeated you, Zabuza?" "There's not too much I can tell you," replied Zabuza. "Like the guy Ikika fought, he's a Shinigami. He wears a long black hooded trench coat that covered his head. He's about average height and is highly skilled in Kido, where he is able to perform high-level Kido without incantations." Kenpachi was of course not impressed by this, since he disliked Kido and found it a tool of weaklings and cowards. But before he could comment on this, Zabuza continued with his description of Naruto. "He's also extremely fast and skilled in using Shuinpa, and is much stronger than he appears and possesses spiritual power at the level of a captain. He's highly skilled in sword fighting and carries a short tanto blade on his right leg and carries an unusual Zanpakudo that takes the form for a sword handle when in its sealed form." "What exactly does his Zanpakudo do?" asked the spiked-haired man, as despite the fact that Naruto was a Kido user, he was becoming intrigued with Naruto. "It's an extremely powerful lightning-type Zanpakudo that can disrupt the weather when released and can cause massive damage to the surrounding area," answered Zabuza, after which he went on to describe his battle with Naruto. When Zabuza finished, Kenpachi became even more excited at the idea of facing someone like Naruto, since he was impressed with how Naruto completely overpowered both Zabuza and Haku, as he knew how strong both were. Haku, in fact, was the only member from the 4th Division that was respected by the members Squad 11, not counting Unohana, since Haku had showed the members of Squad 11 that he was no weakling and was someone to be respected and in some ways feared. "Do you know his name and where he's heading?" asked Kenpachi, hoping to know where to find the hooded boy. "Not really, since he refused to tell me his real name. He just told us to call him Rogue. As for where he's heading, I'm not exactly sure. But he did say that like the Ichigo guy that Ikaku fought, he was trying to save that Rukia girl. So your best bet would be to head to the same place where that other guy is heading." At this, Kenpachi just nodded and was about to turn around and leave the room, but was stopped when Zabuza spoke up. "There's something else you so know, Captain." "And what's that?" "It seems that the kid I fought is from the same world as me." "The shinobi world," replied Zabuza, which caused his captain to raise his eyebrow. "Also, it seems that unlike Haku, me, or the other Shinigami from our world, he is still able to use chakra and use jutsu. He calls himself a shinobi-shinigami hybrid, and I'm certain he'll give you a tough fight, should you find him." After hearing this, the captain of Squad 11 raised his eyebrow even further, as he knew a good bit about shinobi and their abilities, thanks to Zabuza. "Well, he sounds like he'd been fun to fight too," grinned the fighting manic, before he left to search for his new prey. First Squad's barracks. Currently gathered at the barracks of the 1st Division, the lieutenants of the 13th Court Squads were gathered together for an emergency meeting. Once the majority of the lieutenants of the 13 squads had gathered, the third seat of the 4th Division, Ayamuri Yasachika, stepped forward to make his announcement. Ahem. Thank you all for coming so quickly. Now here is the latest situation report to the recent Ryoka invasion. Squad 11's 3rd seated officer, Madarame Ika Kusama, 4th seated officer, Momochi Zabuza-sama, 5th seated officer, Ayasegawa Yumachika-sama, and Squad 4's 5th seated officer Yukihaku-sama. All high-ranked officers have left the battlefront due to serious injuries. We are currently investigating the injury status of all squads. But from the reports we've received, it seems that Squad 11 has been basically annihilated. After hearing this, all the lieutenants in the room were stunned, since Squad 11 had the reputation of having the strongest and fiercest fighters in the Serie. Hence, to hear that the entire division had been virtually wiped out was shocking to say the least. "What, that's impossible," spoke the lieutenant of Squad 3, Kira Izuru. "That can't be," said a worried Hinamori Momo, who was the lieutenant of Squad 5. "How can a couple of Ryoka wipe out an entire division and take out so many high-rank officers in just a few hours?" muttered the lieutenant of Squad 9, Hisejai Shuhei. Looks like Squad 11 isn't so tough after all," scoffed the lieutenant of Squad 2, Omida Marekio, as he picked his nose. "We have, so far, confirmed 4 Ryoka, 2 of which are said to have taken one of our 4th squad members as a hostage and are headed this way. The third person, who is responsible for defeating Squad 11's 4th seated officer, Momochi Zabuza-sama, and Squad 4's 5th seated officer Yukihaku-sama, is also believed to be heading in this direction as well. But unfortunately, we've been unable to locate any of them or sense their spiritual power. Hence, their exact location at this moment is unknown," explained Yasachika. This, of course, made many of the lieutenants worry, since not knowing the location of an invading enemy was a dangerous thing. "Well, in any case, we need to collect more intelligence," stated Kotetsu Isane, the lieutenant of Squad 4. "That reminds me," spoke Iba Tetsuziman, the lieutenant of Squad 7. "We haven't heard or have been able to locate Ikanzaka Jirobo, the 4th seat of my squad, in a while. He was last seen in Block 20 in the West Quarter, but since we haven't heard from him, I'm guessing he was defeated as well." "Isn't that the younger brother of the West Gate gatekeeper Ikanzaka Jidanbo?" asked Squad 10 Lieutenant Matsumoto Ranjaku, where Tetsuziman just nodded in acknowledgement. "Damn it, what the hell is going on here?" asked Izuru angrily. "PHFFF, every single one of them is worthless," scoffed Omida. "Which reminds me, where the hell is the new girl? Isn't she supposed to be here for this meeting? Cut her some slack, Omida, as unlike you, she doesn't scarf down food all day. Captain Yukitake was taken ill again, and she has had to take charge of her squad again. She's probably just running late," defended Ranjaku. "Yeah, well, even still, she's the new one here, so you think that she would have the decency to try and show up on time," replied the overweight Shinigami as he picked his nose again. "Heh, you wouldn't be talking about her like that if she was here right now," commented Tetsuziman. "WWH what? Are you saying I'm afraid of the bitch?" cried Omida in outrage as he puffed out his chest. "Well, given how the last time you pissed her off, she beat the crap out of you, and you were blubbering like an oversized baby begging for mercy." "It was just a strategy to get her to lower her guard," said Omida as he tried to explain away what happened. Beside, I could have beaten any time I wanted to. I only let her beat me because I didn't want to embarrass her." "Yeah, right," scoffed Ranjaku, not believing a word from the lieutenant of Squad 2. "It's true," cried Omida. "Huh, well, if that's the case then, maybe we should tell her that. I'm sure she would be more than happy to give you a rematch," said Shuhei. At this remark, Omida turned chalk white. "WW8, there's no need for that," said the large man as he waved his hands, since he had no wish to get on the bad side of the new lieutenant of Squad 13 again. "Well then, if you don't want another beating from her, I suggest that you keep your fat trap shut for once," answered Ranjaku, rather angrily, as she was in no mood for Omida's blabbering. "Hey, take it easy, Ranjaku. There's no need to work yourself, you. Beside, this isn't the time for stuff like this," spoke Izuru, as he tried to calm his female friend down. As the lieutenants continued to talk amongst themselves, none of them, with the exception of Momo, noticed the lieutenant of Squad 6 Abarai, Renji, quietly leave the room. With Naruto currently jumping across the rooftops of the buildings of the Siriidii, a certain rogue Shinigami was making his way to Senzakyu, Palace of Remorseful Sin, knowing that his mother, Ichigo, and the others would all be heading in that direction as well, since he knew that was where they were holding Rukia until her execution. As Naruto jumped from rooftop to rooftop, he saw signs of Ichigo and the others making their way to Senzakyu, where every so often he saw or heard large explosions erupting from different ends of the Siriidii. But every time he got to where the explosion happened, Ichigo or the others were gone, and all he would find were injured or unconscious Shinigami and destroyed walls and buildings. After jumping from another building and landing on a flat rooftop, Naruto's senses suddenly warned him of danger and told him to move, where as soon as he did, a blue flash of energy appeared out of nowhere and exploded on the spot that Naruto had just been standing in. When he landed on the edge of the rooftop, the hooded teen started a search for the unknown assailant who had fired the energy blast. As he looked around, Naruto suddenly heard a female voice cry out, "Bakudo 62. High Apparankin, way of binding number 60, 200 steps fence." After which 100 or so energy rods appeared out of nowhere and flew towards Naruto. Acting quickly, Naruto began to dodge the energy rods and using his Tanto to deflect those he could not avoid. But as soon as he avoided all the energy rods, he heard the same voice from earlier cry out Bakudo 4. Hainawa, way of binding number 4 crawling rope, where a yellow energy rope appeared and entangled itself around Naruto. But as soon as the energy rope wrapped itself around the hooded teen, Naruto faded away, revealing he had used Utsusimi to escape the binding spell, which faded away with the Naruto afterimage. After avoiding capture, Naruto then reappeared in the center of the rooftop with his Tanto sword still in hand. "Not bad, I have to admit, you're pretty fast," spoke the female voice before she appeared at the edge of the rooftop directly opposite Naruto. The person in question was a medium-tall woman, just slightly shorter than Naruto, with bright long red hair, which flowed down to her ankles, with strands that framed both sides of her face and a yellow clip that parted her hair to the left. She wore a standard Shinigami uniform and carried her Zanpakudo on her left side hip, indicating she was right-handed and wore an armband on her left arm, which showed that she was a lieutenant. "I'm guessing, given your appearance, that you're one of the Ryoka that I've been hearing about lately," commented the female Shinigami. "Yeah, I'm one of them. Although if you want to call me something, you can call me Rogue," replied Naruto with a small smirk. At hearing this, the woman just smirked, where she then slowly drew her Zanpakudo. "Well then, Rogue-san, if you'll be so kind, would you surrender to me, as there are some things that my superiors would like to ask you?" "Sadly, I cannot," replied Naruto with a small smile. "Since I have a thing with authority, call it teenage rebellion or whatnot, I just can't seem to do what other people, other than my mother, want me to do. Besides, I don't acknowledge the Siriidi's authority, especially Central 46S, since as far as I'm concerned, it filled with nothing but arrogant, overgrown, hypocritical windbags who have their heads stuck up so far up their ass that they can't see what's really going, not even when it's staring at them in their faces." At hearing this, the red-haired Shinigami raised her eyebrow. "Well, I can't say I disagree with you on what you said about Central 46, but still, I've got my orders and I have to take you in one way or the other." Naruto, of course, only scoffed at this, since this was another thing he hated about the Shinigami of the Soul Society. Most of them acted like blind, obedient dogs that do everything their masters tell them to do without question, as if they had no minds of their own. "Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, but before we begin, maybe you could tell me your name and what squad you're from, since it's only common courtesy to introduce yourself after someone introduces themselves." "My name is Uzumaki Kushina, Lieutenant of Squad 13. Last time on a rogue Shinigami." "Well, you gotta do what you gotta do, But before we begin, maybe you could tell me your name and what squad you're from. Since it's only common courtesy to introduce yourself after someone introduces themselves. My name is Uzumaki Kushina, Lieutenant of Squad 13. With Naruto and Kushina. After hearing who his new opponent was, Naruto raised his left eyebrow in surprise. Uzumaki? Then that means she is from the shinobi world and is from my clan. Unfortunately, before Naruto could think on the matter any further, he suddenly heard Kushina's voice cry out, "Disintegrate, you black dog of Rondinini. Look upon yourself with horror and tear out your own throat." Bakudo 9. Horin, way of binding number 9 disintegrating circle. As soon as she finished the incantation, an orange-hued tendril with spiraling yellow patterns shot out of her hand and flew towards him. Seeing the incoming tendril, Naruto quickly drew his Tanto blade and raised his sword horizontally in front of him before yelling, "Hado, 32. Okasen, way of destruction number 32, yellow fire flash." After Naruto said this, a horizontal blast of energy erupted from his Tanto and collided with the tendril, destroying it instantly before flying straight for Kushina. Shit, Kushina thought before jumping up into the air to avoid the attack, and then cried Bakudo 62. Hyaparankin, way of binding number 62, 100 steps fence. Once she said this, a glowing rod of blue-white of energy appeared in her hand, where she threw it at Naruto. It then duplicates itself into 100 more rods which rained down on the hooded boy. Knowing he couldn't avoid all the rods in time, Naruto raised hand and said Bakudo 81. Danku, way of binding number 81, splitting void. As soon as Naruto said this, a rectangular barrier appeared in front of him and blocked all the rods that were about to hit him. What the? He can use a level 81 Kido spell without incantation and still have it strong enough to block my attack. He got some serious skill in Kido, that's for sure. Looks like I will have to up my game a bit, the red-headed woman thought. But as soon as she had finishing thinking this, she suddenly heard Naruto yell, "Hado, 58. Tenran, way of destruction number 58, Orchid Sky, creating a large tornado-like blast. Seeing the wind attack coming toward her, Kushina immediately used her Shuinpa, flash step, to avoid the attack. But as soon as she reappeared on the rooftop of a nearby building, she was forced to jump away from a blast of red energy. After avoiding the attack, Kushina looked up and saw Naruto standing above her in midair. But before she could make any kind of attack, Naruto disappeared and reappeared right in front of her and hit her in the gut with the bottom end of his Tanto and followed up with a spinning kick to the side. Recovering quickly, Kushina attempted to hit him with a Hado 33. Sokatsui, way of destruction number 33, blue fireball. But Naruto was just as quick and blocked the blue energy ball with a Bakudo 39. Inkozen, way of destruction number 39, round lock fan. After blocking the attack, Naruto then used his High Shunpa skill to appear on her left side and slashed at her. But to his surprise, the blade went right through her. Crap, Utsusumi, cicada, Naruto thought before Kushina appeared behind him holding her Zanpakudo to his next. Looks like you lose, Kushina with a smirk. I wouldn't be so sure of that, replied Naruto, before he faded away, surprising the red-headed Shinigami. Shit, he can use Utsusumi too, Kushina thought. I'm impressed, Naruto said from a hidden location. I didn't expect that you could use Utsusumi. I'm guessing you were with 2nd Division for some time. I was with them for about 5 years until I became a seated officer, Kushina answered, while looking around for her opponent. I see. I guess that will make sense, especially since you are from Area 36, otherwise known as the Shinobi World. When Naruto said this, a look of surprise appeared on her face. How did you know that? I wasn't sure until now exactly, but your surname pretty much gave you away. Plus, I met up with 2 other Shinigami who were from the Shinobi World as well. Their names were Haku and Zabuza. Wait, are you saying you fought both Haku and Zabuza and defeated them? Pretty much, they put up a decent fight, but sadly they weren't a match for me in the end, Naruto replied. After which he then appeared on the rooftop of a tall nearby building overlooking Kushina. After Naruto declared that he defeated both Haku and Zabuza and appeared on the rooftop of the building, a large frown appeared on Kushina's face, realizing that Naruto was even more dangerous than she originally thought if he defeated both Zabuza and Haku. She of course knew both of them personally, as after they first joined the Siriidii, she sought them out after hearing about them, in the hope of learning any news of her son. Sadly though, neither Zabuza nor Haku had heard of Naruto, but they were at least able to tell her that Konoha was still standing, giving her hope that his son was alive. Before we begin any further, I would like to make you an offer, Naruto said. What sort of offer? Kushin asked with a growing frown. There are some questions I would like to ask you about you and your clan, the Uzumaki. Why do you want to know? And how do you even know about my clan? I know quite a bit about the shinobi world, since like you I come from it, although unlike you I'm still alive. But that's impossible. A normal living person cannot possess the powers of a Shinigami, Kushina stated. Well, you'll find that I'm not exactly a normal person. In fact, I'm not a normal Shinigami either. What do you mean by that? So you don't know, do you? Naruto asked. But then again, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, since Nobrow and Pretty Boy didn't know either. What do you mean? What don't I know, and what exactly do you mean by you not being a normal Shinigami? Well, if you want to know so badly, I guess you just have to agree to my proposal. If you answer my questions about you and your clan, I will tell you everything about the Soul Society's involvement with the shinobi, including its link to the Uzumaki clan. When Kushina heard this, she frowned deeply as she didn't know what to think, since clearly her opponent knew a great deal about the shinobi world and quite possible hold information that she could use, like find a way to enter the shinobi world. But on the other hand, it could be all a trick, getting her to lower her guard and giving him an opportunity to take her out. After a minute or so of deep thought, Kushina finally came to a decision. Your offer is very interesting, but I have a counter-offer. Which is? The hooded boy asked. You surrender now, and come in with me quietly and answer my questions, and I won't beat the information out of you myself, Kushina stated as she readied her Zanpakuto. Sighing deeply, Naruto could only shake his head in disappointment. Oh, I tried being civilized, but it seems that we've reached an impasse. At the same time, he also thought, this is exactly why I don't date redheads, way too emotional and hot-headed. Enter Bleach, OSD Senna. Fine then, I guess we'll have to do this the hard way, Kushina replied, where she then held her Zanpakuto up to her face, holding it sideways, and ran her two front fingers along the side of the blade, while saying, Ignite, Tamamoname, the beautiful fox witch. As soon as Kushina said this, Naruto felt a large pulse of spiritual pressure emanate from the red-headed lieutenant. Damn, her spiritual power is pretty strong, Naruto thought, as he saw large amounts of spiritual energy leaking from her body and her Zanpakuto glowing bright red. Eventually, the Zanpakuto stopped glowing and took the shape of a large crimson-bladed broadsword with a rapier-style hilt shaped like wings and a dark blue gem in the center of the hilt and a guard around the handle. Yet despite its great size, Kushina didn't seem the slightest bit affected and easily held it in her right hand, meaning that it was either lighter than it looked or that Kushina was stronger than she appeared. 1. So that her Zanpakuto's Shurikai initial release, Naruto thought, but before he could think any further on the matter, Kushina suddenly disappeared and reappeared right in front of him. Acting fast, Naruto immediately brought his Tanto sword up, blocking a strong slash from Kushina. But unfortunately, he was caught off guard by the force of the slash, where the attack was much stronger than Naruto expected and was forced all the way back to the other end of the roof. Shit, her strength has increased. Is it because of releasing her Shurikai, or has she been holding back until now? Naruto thought as he struggled to keep Kushina from pushing him off the roof. But just when Naruto thought things couldn't get any worse, Kushina said, Kane, blaze. As soon as she said this, flames erupted from her sword and covered the blade. Shit, Naruto thought when he saw this, as she could feel the intense heat of the flames from the sword on his face and from his own sword, which was starting to heat up. Knowing he was at a disadvantage and needed to do something, Naruto gave Kushina a swift kick to the knee, causing the woman to be momentarily distracted from pushing him off the roof. Once Kushina was distracted, Naruto then quickly used his Shuinpa to move away from Kushina and appear at his original position on the roof, behind Kushina. Acting fast, Kushina spun around to face the hooded boy and lifted her large sword over her head and began to twirl it around before eventually swinging it downward and yelling Kitsune by Foxfire B. After doing this, a massive blast of fire in the shape of a fox's head erupted from Kushina's sword and flew towards Naruto at frightening speed. Fuck me, cursed Naruto when he saw the attack coming towards him and used Danku to form a barrier to block the attack. When the large fire attack collided with Naruto's barrier, the hooded blonde was forced to raise his arm to protect his face from the heat of the flames. Even after the attack split into several large streams of fire and enveloped several of the building behind Naruto in flames, Kushina continued to press on her attack, sending more flames, until eventually Naruto's barrier could take no more and began to crack. Impossible. Naruto thought in shock before his barrier broke, and he was enveloped in flames. Not long after the flames consumed Naruto, they began to die down, thus allowing Kushina to look for him in the hope that he hadn't been killed, since she had questions for him. But just when she thought he would be turned to ash by her attack, a dark figure suddenly appeared behind her and slashed at her. In Bleach OST Senna. Luckily, though, Kushina had caught a glimpse of the figure at the corner of her eye and was able to use Shuinpa to move out of the way in time. But she did receive a slight cut of her sword arm that bled lightly. After avoiding the attack, Kushina reappeared at the other end of the rooftop and stood opposite her assailant, who unsurprisingly turned out to be Naruto, who had barely been able to escape the attack and looked to be a bit singed. Damn, that was too close. If I had been any slower, I would have been toast, muttered Naruto as he had barely been able to escape the attack with his Shuinpa. Not bad. I have to admit you're even faster than I first thought, Kushina said after looking at her arm and seeing that it was only a shallow cut. You're not so bad yourself. I have to admit I didn't think your attack could break through my barrier. Very impressive. I guess I can't afford to underestimate you. Damn straight you can't, Kushina replied before she charged forward and attempted to slash at Naruto, who was able to skillfully deflect her sword and attempted to slash at her. Acting fast, Kushina ducked up the sword and then spun around and attempted to slash at the hooded boy from right side, but missed as he jumped up into the air and landed a few feet from her. Undeterred, Kushina jumped into the air and yelled Kane, once again igniting her sword in flames and attempted to a downward slash down on Naruto's head. Knowing he didn't have much time, Naruto immediately raised his Tanto blade up to block the strike, which was much stronger than Naruto had predicted. It was so great that the force of the strike formed a small crater around Naruto and nearly caused him to fall through the roof. Fortunately, Naruto was still able to withstand the attack and push Kushina back, causing her to land a few feet away from him. But before he could make any kind of counterattack, the red-headed lieutenant re-engaged the rogue Shinigami and unleashed a series of lightning-fast strikes and slashes, keeping Naruto on the defensive and forcing him back to the edge of the rooftop. Unwilling to let Kushina control the battle any longer, Naruto decided to force the elder woman back, where after blocking another of her slashes with his Tanto, he pushed the red-headed Shinigami away from him and unleashed his own series of attacks on her, forcing her to be on the defensive this time. Seeing where this was going, Kushina quickly decided to gain some distance from her opponent and jumped up into the air and fixed some of the spirit particles in the air to her feet and used it to stand in the air. Not wanting to give Kushina the high ground, Naruto quickly followed after the older woman and re-engaged her in a fierce sword battle, where he eventually forced her down. But before Kushina could hit the roof below, she was able to stop herself and pointed her sword up at him before yelling, "Hi no Hannah, scarlet flower petals." See, as soon as she said this, a dozen or so small fireballs erupted from the tip of her sword and flew towards Naruto at high speed. Not wasn't any time. Naruto quickly evaded most of the fireballs and used his sword to deflect the few he could not. But to his surprise, he saw the fireballs he had avoided moments ago circle around and attack him from all directions. Knowing he couldn't move out of the way in time, Naruto tried to deflect the incoming fireballs with his Tanto sword, but was quickly overwhelmed. After the fireballs hit Naruto, there was a large explosion of smoke and fire, after which Kushina saw Naruto come out of the smoke and fall to the ground. But just when she thought she had won the battle, she saw the body of her opponent revert into a large piece of broken stone. What the? Kushina thought in confusion before she caught a flash of light just above her and barely blocked a powerful downward sword strike from above with her sword. When the female lieutenant looked up, she was surprised to see her opponent, who smirked underneath his hood and said, "Surprised to see me?" Before Kushina could even respond to this, Naruto delivered a sharp kick to her chest followed by another powerful sword strike, which Kushina was barely able to block before being sent or falling to the roof below them. After crashing down to the roof, Kushina slowly picked herself up out of the crater, holding her stomach in pain. Eventually, she got back on her feet and found her hooded opponent standing opposite her at the right-hand corner of the rooftop, smirking. When she saw him, the red-headed woman glared in anger and confusion as she recognized the technique he had used. That technique he used to avoid my attack. That was Korimi no Jutsu, body replacement technique. How can you do that? Even if you were a living person from my world and had the powers of Shinigami, you shouldn't be able to use ninjutsu. Oh, so now you want to talk? Naruto remarked, as she sheathed his Tanto back on his leg sheath and saw Kushina glare angrily at him. I told you before I'm not a normal Shinigami. I am a Shinobi Shinigami hybrid, where I have the powers of a Shinigami and can use chakra, which as you know allows me to pre-form ninjutsu and other shinobi techniques. A Shinobi Shinigami hybrid. But how is that even possible? Kushina asked in shock, since a living person having the powers of Shinigami was startling enough. But to also have the ability to use chakra as well was something Kushina thought to be impossible. Well, there's actually a good explanation towards me being a Shinobi Shinigami hybrid, Naruto answered. Which is, well, you see, the thing is I don't really feel like telling you, since you slapped my earlier offer away, Naruto replied with a cheeky grin. Angered by this, Kushin raised her blade up again and intended to get her answers from him, even if she had to beat them out of him. Seeing this, Naruto frowned as he knew what he had to do. Damn it, she no easy opponent. For a lieutenant, her Zanpakuto has a great deal of power. If I keep fighting her with just my Kido and my ninjutsu, I'll just drag the fight out, and by the time I beat her, I would probably have half the Suriitii on me. Then again, Red here is no slouch, and I could lose if I don't get serious, Naruto thought with a frown. I didn't want to come to this, especially since it's only been a couple of hours since my battle with No Brown and Pretty Boy, but I've got no choice. At the same time, Kushina saw her opponent reach behind his lower back, inside his hooded trench coat. He then pulled out an odd-looking wooden sword handle, which had no blade on it or a guard, and a slightly large bottom at the end of the hilt with 3 red gems on it. What's that? Kushina thought with some curiosity. Now, then Kushina-san, allow me to show you what it is like to face me when I use my Zanpakuto. What? Kushina asked in surprise. Wait, isn't that sword you have been using earlier your Zanpakuto? Oh no, Naruto replied with a small smile. As you can see, when my Zanpakuto is in its sealed state, it's not very useful in a fight. So I use my Tanto here, and I only release my Zanpakuto when I have to. Once he finished explaining, Naruto then raised his Zanpakuto and thought, I'm going to need your power. Sumi, see God. Flashback several years ago. For the past 3 hours, an 8-year-old Naruto had been running around Urahara's underground training area, avoiding blow after blow from his most terrifying and deadly opponent yet. One who even Urahara feared, and who Naruto had fought many times before but could never defeat. After avoiding another deadly blow from his opponent, Naruto used the dust cloud created by the attack as cover and hid behind a large boulder. Panting heavily, Naruto tried to think of a way in how he was going to defeat his opponent, knowing how dangerous this person was. But when Naruto moved to the side of the boulder to see if he could see any sign of his opponent, he failed to notice a looming figure sneaking up from behind. Just as Naruto looked out from behind the boulder, a female voice suddenly yelled "Boo!", causing the young shinobi Shinigami to scream in fright and jump 10 feet into the air. When he landed back on the ground, Naruto quickly turned to the person who had snuck up on him and was now laughing her ass off. "Damn you, Kachan, do you want to give me a hardened attack?" Naruto yelled angrily as he glared at his laughing mother. "Oh, come on, Naruto. Huh. Don't be like that. Besides, I couldn't help myself. Ha. The look on your face was just priceless. Yoruchi said between laughs. "Well, haha, you got me," Naruto replied with an annoyed glare as he felt like he lost 10 years of his life with just that scare. "Now, Naruto, don't be like that. This is for your own good. Remember, the goal is to try and hit me, but all you've been doing is running away from me. I could hit you if you would let me use Rayo, Thunder King. Maybe, but that would be missing the point as we're trying to help you learn the names of your other two spirits," Yoruchi replied, making her adopted son glare at her, since he knew she was right. "Fine, then let's try this," Naruto yelled, where he changed forward with his left fist raised, while holding his sealed Zanpakuto in his right hand. But when he went to hit his mother, he passed right through her. "Ow, damn it," cursed Naruto as he crashed into the boulder that was behind his mother and realizing that his mother used Utsusimi. "That's better, but not good enough," the dark-skinned woman. "Crap, how can I beat Kacha? She's just too strong and fast to hit. I need more power. I need to become stronger," Naruto thought in frustration as he refused to give up. "Then perhaps it's time I led you my strength," spoke a familiar male voice which sounded different to him. Inside Naruto's mind, after hearing the familiar male voice from inside his head, the Naruto suddenly found himself standing on the surface of water. When he looked around, he realized he was in the middle of a vast ocean with a clear blue sky above. "Where am I?" Naruto asked himself as he looked at the vast ocean. "Is this the inner world of one of my spirits?" "You are correct. This is my world," the same voice from earlier replied from behind Naruto. When Naruto turned, he was surprised to see a strange, unfamiliar person. He was a tall man with short white hair and two pointed-looking horns sticking out his head. He had an attractive feminine-looking face and wore a dark blue outfit, with sky blue armor over it that was shaped like dragon scales and had bat-like wings on his back. He also carried a medium-sized, double-ended sword with curved tips. "Two. Who are you?" Naruto asked. "Have you forgotten me already, Naruto-kun?" the man asked with an amused smile. Confused at how the strange person knew his name, Naruto was about to ask who the person was again. But before he could, he suddenly realized who the man was given his surroundings. "Wait, you can't be that water dragon guy, can you?" "Correct again," the Zanpakuto spirit replied with a smile, pleased that Naruto had figured out who he was. "But why are you so different?" Naruto asked in confusion, since he couldn't understand a Zanpakuto spirit's new appearance. "Zanpakuto can take any form they wish. This is my human form. The form that you saw earlier was my true form. I decided to take this form, as I thought it would be more comfortable for you to speak to me and less intimidating." After the spirit had finished explaining his new appearance, Naruto had to admit he was a bit more comfortable with his spirit new appearance, as his true form was very intimidating. He was also very appreciative towards his Zanpakuto spirit for being so considerate. "So, tell me, Naruto, do you think you are ready to learn my name and use my power?" the former water dragon asked with a serious look. "I am," Naruto replied with confidence. "I see. Then tell me, why is it that you desire power?" I want to become strong, Naruto answered. And why is it you want to become strong? Do you have a reason? Is it because you want to be strong to fight and destroy hollows, or is it because you want to be strong for the simple sake of being strong? I want to be strong to protect those I care about like Kachan, Uncle Sandal Hat, and Uncle Mustache, Naruto's nickname for Tensai, and other people who can't help themselves. I see, replied the spirit with a blank look before it broke into a smile. I acknowledge and accept your resolve, and will tell you my name and lend you my power. Real world. After returning to the real world, Naruto found himself once again facing his mother again. He then raised his Zanpakuto and said, "You said I need to do better, Kachan. Well, how about this? Now, Naruto, show her the true power of the sea. Let the waves rise and crash and the oceans roar." What at Sumi? Naruto roared, after which one of the gems of his sword hilt glowed green, and a massive burst of spiritual power erupted from Naruto, forcing his adopted mother to take a step back in surprise. After taking a few steps back, Yuruchi saw a large spinning water spout appear around Naruto, blocking her view of him. She was even forced to raise her arm up so to shield her face from the high-velocity water that came from the swirling water spout. Eventually, the water spout died down, where when Yuruchi lowered her arm and looked towards her adopted son, she saw that he was now holding a medium-sized, double-ended sword with curved tips. "Looks like you finally did it, Naruto-chan," Yuichi remarked inside her mind with a small smile. As soon as the water died down, Naruto then started to twirl in his right hand where it generated even more water before swinging it downward and unleashing a powerful blast of water, moving at high speed. When Yuruchi saw the attack coming towards her, she prepared to move out of the way. But before she could do anything, she saw the large blade of water spilt into several dozen smaller crescent-shaped blades of water, traveling at even greater speed. Surprised by this, Yuruchi barely had time to react and narrowly avoided the deadly wave of flying water blades. After Yuruchi avoided the attack, Naruto fell to his knees with exhaustion, as releasing Watatsumi had taken a lot out of him, and he had used nearly all his remaining power on that attack. As soon as Naruto fell to his knee, his adopted mother appeared in front of him and helped him up onto his knees. "Good work, Naruto-chan, you pass," Yuruchi said as she smiled down at her young son after he was back on his feet. "What? But I didn't hit you." "Actually, you did," Yuruchi said, where she indicated to the small cut on her right arm sleeve. Although making a small cut on Yuruchi didn't seem like much, it meant a lot to Naruto, since it showed that he was one step closer to reaching his mother and one day surpassing her. "I think we've done enough for one day, Naruto-chan. How about we go out for ramen to celebrate unlocking another one of your Zanpakuto's abilities?" "Yeah, ramen," cheered Naruto as he felt his second wind coming at the thought of having ramen. After which the two headed back up to Onihara's shop. In flashback, after taking out his Zanpakuto, Naruto's eyes began to glow electric blue, while one of the gems on his sword handle glowed bright green. "Let the waves rise and crash, and the oceans roar." What at Sumi? Enter Bleach OSD Guitar 3. As soon as Naruto yelled the release command for the second form of his Zanpakuto, a large, swirling water spout appeared around Naruto, blocking Kushina's view of him. At the same time, the red-headed Shinigami noticed that storm clouds had formed above them, making it look like it was going to rain soon. What power, Kushina thought in amazement, as the power she was sensing coming from the hooded boy was easily on the level of a captain. This is bad. He has a water-type Zanpakuto. Add that to this power, and he could be serious trouble. Elsewhere in the Serie, not far from where Naruto had his battle with Zabuza and Haku, the former captain of Squad 2 Yuruchi was searching for any sign of her son, knowing that he had long since gone from here. She, of course, had to be careful since there were many members from the 4th Division, the 12th Division, the Shinigami Research and Development Institute, and the Amitsukido Stealth Squad, also investigating the area. As she continued to search for any trace of Naruto in her cat form, She and the other Shinigami suddenly sense a large build of spiritual power and pressure come from the distance. Hey, can you sense that power? One Shinigami from the 4th Division asked. Yeah, replied a member from the 12th Division. It's incredible. Do you think it's one of the captains fighting one of the Ryoka? The 4th Division member asked, since the power they were sensing was at the level of a captain. No, it isn't. A member of the Shinigami Research and Development Institute suddenly said as she held up a device that was seemingly registering the spiritual power.